Chapter 368. Xiao Chen's uncle was an almighty at the Tao Emperor realm. When Du Qingfeng said that the heaven-scorching ruler was an almighty at the Tao Emperor realm, Chu Wuming's expression instantly changed greatly when he heard this. He looked at Du Qingfeng with an expression of disbelief as he said, "An almighty at the Tao Emperor realm? Elder Du, you can't speak carelessly like this. Are you sure?" Chu Wuming naturally trusted Du Qingfeng completely because Du Qingfeng was his savior. Moreover, Du Qingfeng had always been loyal and devoted to him, so Du Qingfeng naturally wouldn't deceive him. However, Chu Wuming still found it difficult to accept that Xiao Chen's uncle was an almighty at the Tao Emperor realm. How could this be possible? How could an almighty at the Tao Emperor realm appear in a place like Xiao Chen's Moontrace city? When faced with Chu Wuming's surprise, Du Qingfeng felt the same in his heart as well, and he forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart as he spoke to Chu Wuming. "Your Highness, I'm 100% sure that Xiao Chen's uncle is absolutely an almighty at the Tao Emperor realm. As for the shock and bewilderment in your Highness's heart, I don't think it's strange at all. Young Master Xiao Chen had revealed earlier that he and his uncle are independent cultivators that wander the world. At the beginning, I was curious as to how a young Master Xiao Chen could possess such combat strength since he's an independent cultivator. Without the fostering of a sect, the combat strength of independent cultivators is generally on the weaker side when compared to cultivators at the same cultivation realm. However, now it would seem like this bewilderment can be explained. With an uncle at the Tao Emperor realm personally fostering him, it's not strange that young Master Xiao Chen's combat strength is so formidable." Needless to say, Du Qingfeng's words had unknowingly helped Xiao Chen greatly. As soon as these words were spoken, the last bit of bewilderment in Chu Wuming's heart instantly vanished into nothingness. A wisp of excitement instantly appeared in his eyes. As someone who wasn't willing to admit defeat in the battle for Crown Prince, Chu Wuming naturally understood what the appearance of the heaven-scorching ruler meant. If he was able to obtain the support of the heaven-scorching ruler, then Chu Wuming would obviously possess the ability to go against his two older brothers. Chu Wuming forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart as he looked at Du Qingfeng and said, "Elder Du Qingfeng, what do you think I should do now?" "Young master, didn't you already make your decision?" Du Qingfeng replied with a smile when he heard Chu Wuming's words. He wanted Chu Wuming to rope in the heavenly stellar residence in venerable heaven-scorching ruler because Chu Wuming's current situation really required the protection of a Tao Emperor realm expert. He never expected that he would actually obtain such a harvest. If he was really able to rope in the heaven-scorching ruler, then not only would Chu Wuming possess the support of a Tao Emperor realm expert, more importantly, if he was able to rope in a Tao Emperor realm expert to join the Moonless Empire's imperial family, then it would absolutely be a great merit to him. In this way, Chu Wuming's hopes in the following battles would be slightly greater. When Chu Wuming thought about how his father would definitely praise him if he were to introduce the heaven-scorching ruler to him in the future, his heart burned with passion. However, he quickly forced himself to calm down and immediately realized a problem. He looked at Du Qingfeng and said with some worry, "But brother Xiao Chen didn't specially introduce me to his uncle today. In this way, I wonder if brother Xiao Chen will have some." Xiao Chen didn't take the initiative to introduce the heaven-scorching ruler to Chu Wuming. Chu Wuming was naturally worried about this. Would Xiao Chen not want him to have too much contact with the heaven-scorching ruler? If Xiao Chen wasn't willing, then his hopes of roping in the heaven-scorching ruler would become extremely slim. After all, Xiao Chen was the heaven-scorching ruler's nephew, and the two of them were originally family. Du Qingfeng spoke with a solemn expression when he heard Chu Wuming's worry. "So your Highness can't be too hasty. You must know that any almighty Tao Emperor is an overlord of an area. If half-saints and saints don't appear, then almighty Tao Emperors are invincible existences. I've fought all over in my life, and I've seen some almighty Tao Emperors in Danyang County. Every single one of them has their own temperament, so roping in a Tao Emperor isn't an easy task. It was absolutely not easy to rope in a Tao Emperor realm expert, and this was something that was beyond doubt." Chu Wuming's face dimmed down slightly when he heard Du Qingfeng. "Right, how could a Tao Emperor realm expert be so easily roped in by me? I was too excited earlier, and that was why I overlooked such an important problem. Du Qingfeng continued when he noticed the sense of loss in Chu Wuming's heart. Your Highness, there's no need for that. If it was under normal circumstances, it would indeed be extremely difficult for your Highness to rope in a Dao Emperor realm expert. However, the situation at the Heavenly Stellar Residence is different. Moreover, your Highness can't directly come into contact with Xiao Chen's uncle. The crux of roping in a Dao Emperor realm expert is young Master Xiao Chen. Your Highness must understand this. Chu Wuming could only rely on Xiao Chen if he wanted to rope in the Heaven Scorching Ruler. He could only make the Heaven Scorching Ruler lend him a hand by having a good relationship with Xiao Chen. There were some things that the Heaven Scorching Ruler obviously wouldn't care about if Chu Wuming said it. However, if Xiao Chen mentioned it, the Heaven Scorching Ruler might agree. It was just like asking the Heaven Scorching Ruler to help Chu Wuming. If it was Xiao Chen who said it, it would obviously have a much better effect than Chu Wuming. A wisp of great joy appeared on his face as he said, Elder Du is right. I'll stay in Moontrace City for the next few days. However, there's one thing that I hope Elder Du can personally handle. Immediately return to the Imperial Capital and bring all the treasures that I've collected. I want to gift them to Brother Xiao Chen to express my sincerity. In order to rope in the Heaven Scorching Ruler, Chu Wuming was obviously burning his bridges. This was his only hope to continue dealing with his two older brothers. When he heard Chu Wuming's words, Du Qingfeng nodded in response and didn't say anything else. If it was anyone else, Chu Wuming would definitely not agree to take out all his belongings. However, the Heaven Scorching Ruler was an almighty Dao Emperor. He was worthy of this price. Moreover, compared to an almighty Dao Emperor, Chu Wuming's treasures were indeed nothing. They immediately set off for the Imperial Capital. After sending off Du Qingfeng, Chu Wuming suddenly thought of Wu De. He knew that Wu De had once wanted to kill Xiao Chen. At this moment, Chu Wuming's face sank as he said, this Wu clan is simply courting death. Even Brother Xiao Chen was touched. Men, surround the Wu clan. This king wants to personally make a trip to the Wu clan. I want to see exactly what kind of courage this tiny Wu clan has to make a move against Brother Xiao Chen. Previously, Chu Wuming had taken a fancy to Xiao Chen, but it hadn't reached the point where he couldn't give up. However, it was different now. Xiao Chen's uncle was an almighty Dao Emperor. This was a completely different concept. He was afraid that Wu Yun would mess things up and cause Xiao Chen to be displeased. So, Chu Wuming intended to personally take a look at the Wu clan. If Wu Yun was unable to satisfy Xiao Chen, then Chu Wuming would absolutely not hesitate to annihilate the entire Wu clan in order to curry favor with Xiao Chen. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the current Xiao Chen was sufficient to make Chu Wuming pay any price besides his life. No matter what, Chu Wuming had to obtain Xiao Chen and obtain the support of the Heavenly Stellar Residence. Chapter 369. Chu Wuming's sudden arrival startled everyone in the Wu family. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the Wu family's biggest backer was Chu Wuming. If it weren't for Chu Wuming, the Wu family wouldn't have been able to develop into the #1 family in Moontrace City. Seated at the head of the hall, Chu Wuming swept an ice-cold glance at the Wu family members below. The one leading the group was naturally the Wu family head, who was also Wu Yun and Wu De's father. Your Wu family is truly audacious. You even dared to offend my blood brother, especially that Wu De. He actually wanted to kill Brother Xiao Chen. Even 1,000 deaths wouldn't be enough to appease the anger in my heart. Chu Wuming said coldly as he looked at the Wu family members. He had already described Xiao Chen as his blood brother. Upon hearing this, the Wu family head immediately knelt before Chu Wuming and said with a face full of horror, Your Highness, please calm down. It's all because of that unfilial son of mine. Besides, we didn't know that young Master Xiao Chen was acquainted with Your Highness. The Wu family head could already tell that Chu Wuming was furious. In fact, he had even sensed a terrifying killing intent from Chu Wuming's eyes. It seemed that Chu Wuming had already thought of annihilating the Wu family. One had to admit that the Wu family head's intuition was very accurate. For a moment, Chu Wuming had indeed thought of annihilating the Wu family to curry favor with Xiao Chen. However, due to Wu Yun's existence, Chu Wuming hesitated. In addition, Xiao Chen had already given Wu De a chance. As such, there was no need to annihilate the Wu family. Of course, if Wu De couldn't fulfill Xiao Chen's request, he would definitely die and even the Wu family would be buried with him. In order to rope in Xiao Chen, a mere Wu family wasn't worth mentioning. It didn't matter if they were annihilated. Wu Yun had already brought Wu De to those families that had been persecuted by Chu Wuming. When he saw the terrified Wu family members, Chu Wuming stood up and coldly left behind a sentence before leaving. Tell Wu Yun and that reckless Wu De that if they are unable to fulfill Brother Xiao Chen's request, then Wu De should directly kill himself. Otherwise, if I personally take action, it will not be so simple. Humph. Chu Wuming did not wait for the Wu family to reply. He left the Wu family under the protection of a group of imperial guards. That night, when Wu Yun returned to the Wu family, her father told her the truth about Chu Wuming's visit. Hearing this, Wu Yun smiled bitterly. She knew that the Wu family had no other way out. She had to get Wu De to obtain everyone's forgiveness. In the next few days, Chu Wuming stayed in the Moon Trace City's City Lord's mansion. Furthermore, Chu Wuming would take the initiative to invite Xiao Chen every day. They would either tour the beautiful scenery of the Mirage Moon Plains together or drink to their heart's content. Chu Wuming's attitude towards Xiao Chen could be said to be extremely cordial. He didn't have the slightest bit of arrogance as a prince of the imperial family. 5 days passed. On this day, Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming were galloping on the Mirage Moon Plains as usual. The two of them rode on tall and strong dragon horses, running side by side on the boundless Mirage Moon Plains. Behind them were a group of imperial guards, as well as Du Chengfeng and Zhang Qi. In these 5 days, Du Chengfeng had also successfully returned from the imperial capital. He had also brought back the things that Chu Wuming needed. After galloping for a while, they arrived at a small stream. Xiao Chen and Du Chengfeng slowed down at the same time. With a clear laugh, Chu Wuming took the lead and said, "Ha, Brother Xiao, no wonder people say that even if cultivators can fly, the feeling of galloping on a horse is always the best. These few days, I have been galloping on the Mirage Moon Plains with Brother Xiao. I am deeply moved. That's because your Highness' dragon horse is strong. If it were a normal horse, it would naturally not be able to achieve this." Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiao Chen smiled and replied, "Brother Xiao, you flatter me. Today, I have some things to give to you. I hope that Brother Xiao will not refuse." Du Chengfeng had already brought the treasures that Chu Wuming had collected. Chu Wuming did not hesitate and directly handed a storage ring to Xiao Chen. He had already expected that Chu Wuming would definitely give him something. After some hesitation, Xiao Chen took the storage ring that Chu Wuming handed over. After casually checking it, Xiao Chen was secretly delighted. Chu Wuming was really generous. Not to mention other things, there were no less than 50 illusionary moon fruits in this storage ring. These were clearly Chu Wuming's treasures. Now that he had taken all of them out and given them to Xiao Chen, it was clear that Chu Wuming was sincere. Seeing that Xiao Chen kept the storage ring, Chu Wuming also spoke in a timely manner. "Brother Xiao, to be honest, there are some things that I have always wanted to say to you. However, I never had the chance. Your Highness, please feel free to speak." Upon hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiao Chen replied. Finally, it was time for him to lay his cards on the table. As soon as Xiao Chen finished speaking, Chu Wuming immediately dismounted from his horse and knelt on one knee before Xiao Chen with an extremely serious expression. "Brother, you know my current situation. I earnestly request that Brother Xiao and the Heavenly Stellar Residence can lend me a hand. I will be eternally grateful." Chu Wuming had finally spoken his mind. Furthermore, he had specifically mentioned the Heavenly Stellar Residence. His meaning was obvious. Not only did he need Xiao Chen's help, he also needed the entire Heavenly Stellar Residence's help. Seeing that Chu Wuming actually knelt on the ground and refused to get up, Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't be careless. He hurriedly dismounted from his horse and helped Chu Wuming up. He pretended to be shocked and said, "Your Highness, what are you doing?" Facing Xiao Chen's support, Chu Wuming stubbornly said, "Brother Xiao, please promise me. Otherwise, I would rather kneel for a long time. Everything was developing according to Xiao Chen's plan. At this moment, Chu Wuming had taken the initiative to lay his cards on the table and even offered such a generous gift. Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't refuse. But on the surface, Xiao Chen still didn't immediately agree. He only told Chu Wuming that he still had to go back and ask his uncle. He would only give Chu Wuming an answer tomorrow. Xiao Chen stayed with Chu Wuming until dusk. When night fell, Xiao Chen brought Zhang Qi back to the Heavenly Stellar Residence. As soon as they entered the Heavenly Stellar Residence, Xiao Chen said to Zhang Qi, "Senior, go to the City Lord's residence in 2 hours to find the third prince. Tell him that uncle has already agreed. Ask him when he will be heading to the imperial capital." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Zhang Qi nodded in response. That night, when Zhang Qi told Chu Wuming this news, Chu Wuming was practically dancing with joy. He happily replied to Zhang Qi and said that he would definitely personally pay a visit tomorrow to discuss the matter of heading to the imperial capital. After sending Zhang Qi off, Chu Wuming could no longer contain the excitement in his heart. He looked at Du Chengfeng and said excitedly, "Elder Du Chengfeng, I succeeded. Elder Du, I've succeeded. Xiao Chen's uncle has finally agreed to help me." As a prince, Chu Wuming had never lost his composure like this since he was young. However, Du Chengfeng could understand this. After all, obtaining the support of the Heavenly Stellar Residence was far too important to Chu Wuming. Looking at Chu Wuming, Du Chengfeng smiled faintly and said, "Since the Heavenly Stellar Residence has already agreed, Your Highness should return to the imperial capital as soon as possible. Your Highness has indeed wasted too much time in Moontrace City. The imperial capital still needs Your Highness to hold the fort. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 370. After staying in Moontrace City for a long time, Chu Wuming nodded slightly after hearing Du Chengfeng's words. Elder Du is right. Tomorrow, I will personally go to the Heavenly Stellar Residence and settle the matter of going to the imperial capital as soon as possible. After that, I will return to the imperial capital. The battle for the position of Crown Prince had reached a critical juncture. Everyone in the Heavenly Stellar Continent knew that the position of Crown Prince would be decided within a year or 3 years. Therefore, at this critical juncture, Chu Wuming naturally couldn't leave the imperial capital for a long time. Just as Chu Wuming was in a hurry to return to the imperial capital, on the other side of the Heavenly Stellar Residence, Xiao Chen and the Burning Heaven ruler were counting the storage ring that Chu Wuming had given them. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. This time, Chu Wuming could be considered to have spent a lot of money. There were a total of 50 illusionary moon fruits in the storage ring. In addition, there were various pills, talismans, and even 300,000 spirit stones. Moreover, these 300,000 spirit stones were all middle grade. It could be considered a windfall, especially those 50 illusionary moon fruits. It was unknown how much Chu Wuming had paid to obtain these 50 illusionary moon fruits. However, he had given them all to Xiao Chen. Adding these 50 illusionary moon fruits, the Burning Heaven ruler now had a total of 80 illusionary moon fruits in his hands. The 78 Heavenly Stellar Continent warriors present would each receive 1 illusionary moon fruit and there would still be some left over. Chen, these 80 illusionary moon fruits will be divided equally among the people below. The two of us will divide the rest. Looking at Xiao Chen, the Burning Heaven ruler said. 80 illusionary moon fruits. Including Xiao Chen and the Burning Heaven ruler, there would be 78 illusionary moon fruits. The remaining 2 would give Xiao Chen and the Burning Heaven ruler an extra 1. The two of them would receive 2 illusionary moon fruits this time. Xiao Chen didn't refuse the Burning Heaven ruler's decision. Afterward, the Burning Heaven ruler took out 4 illusionary moon fruits and gave 2 to Xiao Chen. Then, he called Si Kongming over and had him distribute the remaining 76 illusionary moon fruits to the people below. The illusionary moon fruits could be said to be the first treasure they had obtained after coming to the Heavenly Stellar Continent. Now that everyone would receive 1, naturally, everyone was happy. After a night, Chu Wuming personally came to the Heavenly Stellar Residence. And this time, Chu Wuming was very courteous. He Wuming personally sent the guard to inform Xiao while he himself stood waiting outside. Very soon, Xiao Chen personally came out to receive Chu Wuming. He did not beat around the bush and directly said to Chu Wuming, "Sorry for the long wait, Your Highness. Uncle is already waiting for you. Please follow me." Hearing that the burning heaven ruler was already waiting for him, Chu Wuming was pleasantly surprised. He quickly followed Xiao Chen and walked towards the backyard. Finally, he was able to personally speak to the burning heaven ruler. This was something that Chu Wuming had always dreamed of. He was even more anxious than Xiao Chen. Moreover, Chu Wuming's face was clearly a little nervous. Xiao Chen smiled and said to Chu Wuming, "Your Highness, there's no need to be like this. I've already told Uncle about it." "Thank you, Brother Xiao." Chu Wuming immediately cupped his hands and thanked Xiao Chen. He also secretly let out a sigh of relief. Under Xiao Chen's lead, Chu Wuming arrived at the main courtyard. In the courtyard, he finally saw the burning heaven ruler that he'd been looking forward to. He stepped forward in an extremely respectful manner and bowed to the burning heaven ruler. "Junior Chu Wuming greets Senior Dao Emperor. There's no need to be so courteous. Chener has already told me about Your Highness. Since Your Highness and Chener hit it off at first sight, there's no harm in helping Your Highness. However, I have something to ask. Your Highness, how do you plan on allowing me to directly participate in the competition for the throne?" The burning heaven ruler spoke indifferently with a composed expression. Compared to the two Dao emperors of the imperial family, the burning heaven ruler was clearly an outsider. If he directly interfered in the competition for the throne, it would clearly be against the rules. However, Chu Wuming already had a plan for this. At this moment, Chu Wuming replied respectfully when he heard the burning heaven ruler. "I wouldn't dare. I already have a plan, but I still need your approval." "Let's hear it," said the burning heaven ruler. "It's actually very simple. Senior and Brother Xiao Chen will follow me to the imperial capital, and I'll introduce Senior to my imperial father. At that time, Senior will join my imperial family and become a supreme emperor of my imperial family. In this way, you'll be considered a member of my imperial family, and no one will dare to say anything about you interfering in the competition for the throne," making the burning heaven ruler directly become a supreme emperor of the imperial family. This name was indeed slightly strange. How could an outsider become the supreme emperor of the Moonless Empire? However, this wasn't strange in the Moonless Empire. Moreover, there were already many precedents. In the Moonless Empire, the Supreme Emperor was equivalent to the Supreme Elder of a sect. There was no need for him to be related by blood. At the same time, he wouldn't participate in the management of the empire. Most of the time, he was more like a guardian of the empire. So, as long as it was a Dao Emperor, he could become the Supreme Emperor of the Moonless Empire with the approval of the imperial family. With Chu Wuming's recommendation, there was definitely no problem for the burning heaven ruler to become the Supreme Emperor. In this regard, Xiao Chen and the burning heaven ruler naturally wouldn't refuse. After some discussion, everyone finally decided to set off for the imperial capital tomorrow. However, not everyone would go to the imperial capital tomorrow. Only the burning heaven ruler, Xiao Chen, and Zhang Qi would set off from the heavenly stellar residence. As for the others, they would temporarily stay in Moontrace City. After Xiao Chen and the others settled down in the imperial capital, they would then set off for the imperial capital. After making the decision, Chu Wuming didn't stay for long. He quickly got up and bid farewell. He personally sent Chu Wuming to the door and cupped his hands to Chu Wuming. "Your Highness, please be careful. Brother Xiao, there's no need to send me off. Tomorrow, I'll send someone to the residence to welcome Senior Burning Heaven. Please prepare in advance, Brother Xiao." Chu Wuming replied with a smile when he heard Xiao Chen's words. The rock in his heart had finally been lifted. The burning heaven ruler had personally agreed to Chu Wuming's request. On the way out of the heavenly stellar residence, Chu Wuming only felt happy. It was as if the entire world had suddenly become clear. In the past, he was suppressed by his two older brothers to the point he couldn't breathe. Now, Chu Wuming also had an almighty Tao Emperor behind him. In this way, the situation would be completely reversed. Chu Wuming could be considered to truly have the possibility of competing with his two older brothers. When Chu Wuming returned to the city lord's estate, Wu Yun was already waiting for him when he stepped into the city lord's estate. Chu Wuming's face sank slightly when he saw Wu Yun, and his tone was slightly displeased as he said, "How is it? Has Wu Da's matter been settled? Let me tell you, if Wu Da isn't able to fulfill Brother Xiao Chen's request, then I'll annihilate him immediately. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 371. Chu Wuming's tone was extremely firm, and he didn't seem like he was joking at all. Wu Yun didn't doubt in the slightest that if Wu Da was really unable to fulfill Xiao Chen's request, then he would definitely die. Wu Yun hurriedly bowed and replied with a respectful tone. "Don't worry, Your Highness. The matter has been dealt with. Wu Da and I have even paid a personal visit to that old man in the unsullied residence. Moreover, we've obtained his forgiveness and compensation." Chu Wuming's expression eased up slightly when he heard Wu Yun's reply, and he nodded lightly. "That's good. However, I'll make it clear first. If Brother Xiao Chen is displeased, then I can take Wu Da's head at any time. He could be considered to have fulfilled Xiao Chen's request, but everything still depended on Xiao Chen. If Xiao Chen was still dissatisfied, then Wu Da would still have to die." Wu Yun nodded and replied when she heard Chu Wuming. However, she was slightly puzzled in her heart. Why did Chu Wuming treat Wu Da so generously and even curry favor with Xiao Chen after making a trip to the heavenly stellar residence? This question had been in Wu Yun's heart for a few days now. Of course, this was also because Chu Wuming hadn't told Wu Yun about the Heaven-Burn ruler. Otherwise, she would definitely understand all of this. It went without saying how important a Tao Emperor realm expert was to Chu Wuming. Wu Yun obediently accompanied Chu Wuming as the two of them walked towards the backyard. Perhaps it was because he felt that he'd been too fierce to Wu Yun recently, but Chu Wuming still spoke indifferently as they walked. Xiao Chen and the heavenly stellar residence that stands behind him are existences that absolutely can't be offended. You might not know, but Xiao Chen's uncle is a Tao Emperor realm expert. Whether I'll be able to ascend to the position of Crown Prince this time depends entirely on Xiao Chen and his uncle. He told Wu Yun about the heavenly stellar residence, and Wu Yun was stunned when she heard this. She'd never imagined that there would actually be a Tao Emperor realm expert in the heavenly stellar residence. At this moment, Wu Yun finally understood why Chu Wuming would curry favor with Xiao Chen. They had already decided on a time to head to the imperial capital. Early the next morning, Chu Wuming personally led a group of people to the heavenly stellar residence to welcome the Burning Sky Ruler. Just as the Burning Sky Ruler, Xiao Chen, and Zhang Qi were about to step onto the carriage and leave, the old man that Xiao Chen had saved hurriedly walked out of the courtyard. He knelt in front of Xiao Chen and said with tears of gratitude, "This old servant thanks young master for saving my life." Ever since he was saved by Xiao Chen, the old man had always remained in the heavenly stellar residence. At this moment, when he saw that Xiao Chen was about to leave, he naturally couldn't care about anything else. He immediately knelt in front of Xiao Chen and thanked him. Xiao Chen personally helped the old man up. Originally, Xiao Chen planned to let the old man leave after he recovered from his injuries. However, the old man was all alone now. Coupled with the fact that he was unwilling to leave the heavenly stellar residence for the sake of repaying Xiao Chen's kindness, he was willing to be at Xiao Chen's beck and call. Xiao Chen was helpless in this regard. In the end, he could only give the old man the job of housekeeper. However, the old man just so happened to be a great help to Xiao Chen. Everyone would be heading to the imperial capital in the future. As such, the heavenly stellar residence in Moon Trace City would be empty. With the old man taking care of things here, it would save Xiao Chen a lot of trouble. Furthermore, Xiao Chen trusted the old man quite a bit. Therefore, Xiao Chen was very reassured to let him guard the untainted residence in Moon Trace City. After comforting the old man, Xiao Chen accompanied the Burning Sky Ruler onto the carriage. Throughout the entire process, Xiao Chen didn't ask a single question about Wu Da. In Xiao Chen's opinion, Wuda definitely didn't have the courage to deceive him. Furthermore, the old man had already told him about Wuda coming to find him. Even the old man had forgiven Wuda, so the others would definitely do the same. Since Wuda had already fulfilled his request, Xiaochen clearly couldn't be bothered to lower himself to Wuda's level. They directly set off for the imperial capital. Xiaochen, the burning sky ruler, Chu Wuming, and Wu Yun sat in the carriage. As for Du Chengfeng and Zhang Qi, they rode on dragon horses. Everyone left Moontrace City. Of course, the journey from Moontrace City to the imperial capital was very long. Naturally, they couldn't ride a carriage all the way. Instead, they used a teleportation array. In the Tiana continent, teleportation arrays were extremely common. Almost all the larger cities had teleportation arrays. In the Moonless Empire, there were a total of 32 cities with teleportation arrays. In Black Mountain City, which was less than a day's journey from Moontrace City, there was a teleportation array. Everyone rode a carriage to Black Mountain City, and then used the teleportation array to go to the imperial capital. In this way, they only needed a day to reach the imperial capital. It had to be said that in many aspects, the Tiana continent was much more advanced than the heavenly Qin continent. Take teleportation arrays for example. The Tiana continent was much more advanced than the heavenly Qin continent. Because of the existence of teleportation arrays, the entire Tiana continent had built a huge teleportation network. Thus, it was much easier for cultivators to travel. At the same time, because of the teleportation arrays, the major forces of the Tiana continent didn't need to tame those flying demonic beasts. Compared to flying demonic beasts, teleportation arrays were much more convenient and faster. In the Tiana continent, there were very few forces that used flying demonic beasts. In one day, everyone rushed from Moontrace City to Black Mountain City. Because of Chu Wuming's lead, everyone naturally had a smooth journey. The Black Mountain City Lord personally welcomed them and accompanied them all the way to the teleportation array. Naturally, it couldn't be compared to the teleportation array that Xiaosheng had built. The teleportation array in Black Mountain City was a short-distance teleportation array. There was only a single array pattern that emitted a faint light. With the activation of the array, it could open up a spatial passage to the imperial capital. This way, people could be sent to the imperial capital. Senior Burning Heaven, please. Respectfully, he made a gesture to the Burning Heaven ruler, indicating that he should first step onto the teleportation array. Seeing that Chu Wuming was actually so respectful to the Burning Heaven ruler, the Black Mountain City Lord to the side also looked at the Burning Heaven ruler in surprise. Without any formalities with Chu Wuming, the Burning Heaven ruler took the lead and stepped onto the teleportation array. Behind him, Chu Wuming and Xiaochen followed closely. After the three of them stepped onto the teleportation array, the rest of Zhang Qi, Du Chengfeng, Wu Yun, as well as a group of imperial guards, horses, and carriages, entered the teleportation array one after another. The teleportation array was very large. There was no problem in teleporting over 1,000 people at once. After everyone stepped onto the teleportation array, Chu Wuming shouted in a clear voice, "Activate the array." Following Chu Wuming's shout, the array was activated. Immediately, everyone's figures were quickly enveloped by the white light emitted by the array. After a few breaths, the light disappeared, and the figures of Xiaochen and the others also disappeared. In just the blink of an eye, Xiaochen and the others arrived at the imperial capital. Walking out of the teleportation array, they saw a bustling city. This city was more prosperous than any city that Xiaochen had ever seen. The large cities in the heavenly Qin continent couldn't be compared to the imperial capital of the Moonless Empire. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 372. Using hard bluestone to build a house would take a longer time than using wood. Furthermore, the Moonless Empire's imperial capital was so large. From this point alone, it was not difficult to see how long the Moonless Empire's imperial capital had existed. Without a long history, it would be impossible for it to reach such a scale. The teleportation array of the Moonless Empire's imperial capital was located outside the imperial palace. However, it was also guarded by the imperial guards. Other than the current nobles, ordinary warriors who wanted to use the teleportation array had to pay a certain amount of spirit stones. Escorted by a group of imperial guards, Xiao Chen and the others sat in the carriage and rushed all the way to the imperial palace. The journey was not far, only separated by a street. However, in this short distance, Xiao Chen saw how extraordinary the Moonless Empire's imperial capital was. People came and went on the streets. Moreover, everyone who passed by had a cultivation base. Compared to the heavenly Qin continent, the martial Dao was indeed much stronger. It could be said that everyone here practiced martial arts. Perhaps it was precisely because the Sky River continent had such a strong martial arts style that the Sky River continent produced many saints. After all, the base of their martial arts cultivation was there, so the probability of a saint appearing was naturally higher. Along the way, he led Xiao Chen and the others to the imperial palace. This time, Wuyan did not accompany them. After arriving at the imperial capital, Chu Wuming let Wuyan go back first. In the same carriage, Xiao Chen and the others arrived at the imperial palace's main gate. The magnificent city gate was like a city within a city. Inside the city gate and the city wall was the owner of the entire Moonless Empire, the imperial family of the Chu family. A group of several hundred imperial guards was guarding the city gate. The leader of this group was a Dao Transformation Realm cultivator. This was a true Dao Transformation Realm cultivator guarding the city gate. Seeing Chu Wuming's carriage arrive at the city gate, the group of imperial guards carried out a routine inspection. However, when the leader of the imperial guards began to interrogate Xiao Chen and the others, Chu Wuming took the lead and shouted angrily. "They are all my friends. What, are you going to interrogate the people I brought?" Xiao Chen and the others were invited by Chu Wuming. Now that they were being interrogated after entering the imperial palace, it was obviously embarrassing for Chu Wuming. However, what was even more excessive was still to come. After hearing Chu Wuming's words, the leader of the imperial guards respectfully said, "Your Highness, Your 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 Highness." Chu Wuming, "Your Highness, Your 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 Highness." His attitude was very respectful, but his words were not respectful at all. Moreover, this imperial guard captain directly mentioned the second prince's name, which made Chu Wuming even more furious. This made Chu Wuming angry. He knew that the leader of the imperial guards was one of the second prince's men. His current actions were clearly a show of strength. The third prince's expression had completely darkened. He immediately shouted coldly to Du Chengfeng behind him. "Impudent! How can an ant like you casually interrogate the guests I invited? Elder Du, take these people down and lock them up. I will personally deal with them after I'm done with my business." Chu Wuming did not tolerate the provocation of the leader of the imperial guards. Although he knew that the second prince was behind this person, Chu Wuming might have tolerated him in the past. However, Chu Wuming now had the support of the Burning Skies ruler. He did not need to be afraid of his two elder brothers. He immediately ordered Du Chengfeng to take these people down. With sufficient confidence, Chu Wuming completely displayed his tyrannical side. Du Chengfeng did not hesitate when he heard Chu Wuming's words. He immediately took action and subdued the entire group of imperial guards who were in charge of guarding the city gates. After subduing this group of imperial guards, Chu Wuming ordered his men to take over. Then, he quickly walked up to the Burning Skies ruler and bowed respectfully to the Burning Skies ruler. "Senior Burning Skies, Senior Zhang Qi, Brother Xiao Chen, I've made a fool of myself in front of you. It's my incompetence. Your Highness, there's no need for that. I believe this situation will change very soon." Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiao Chen smiled and patted him on the shoulder. Hearing that, Chu Wuming also sneered and nodded heavily. Indeed, now that he had the Burning Skies ruler behind him, this situation was indeed about to change. Chu Wuming respectfully gestured for everyone to enter. Under Chu Wuming's lead, everyone strode into the palace. As the center of power of the Moonless Empire, the Imperial Palace's surface area was naturally incomparably large. It would take at least 7 or 8 days to walk around the Imperial Palace without using cultivation. Of course, if one used cultivation, it would be a different story. The entire Imperial Palace was divided into 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. The 3 palaces were where government affairs were handled, while the 6 courtyards were where the imperial concubines and the emperor lived. They walked all the way to the most central and largest martial harmony palace. This was where the Moonless Empire usually held court. It was also the most magnificent palace in the entire imperial palace. At the same time, it was where the main palace of the 3 palaces was located. Today, Chu Wuming wanted to introduce the Burning Skies ruler to his imperial father, so he naturally chose the Martial Harmony Palace. The addition of a Dao Emperor realm expert was definitely a major event of the empire. They walked all the way to the Martial Harmony Palace. The palace gates were tightly shut, and there was a group of imperial guards standing guard outside. At the same time, there were 2 pale-faced temple servants, here, eunuchs. They stood on both sides of the palace gates. Chu Wuming walked up to one of the temple servants and asked, "Is Imperial Father inside?" "I have something to report." "Please report." "His Imperial Majesty is indeed inside. However, Your Highness, Third Prince, please wait for a moment. His Imperial Majesty is currently discussing important matters with the Second Prince and the First Prince. He ordered that no one is to disturb them." After hearing Chu Wuming's words, the temple servant actually didn't report it. Instead, he tactfully refused. A mere temple servant actually dared to refuse him. Moreover, his request to see Imperial Father was refused. After hearing the servant's reply, Xiaochen felt a wave of helplessness. It seemed that Chu Wuming's situation was indeed very bad. Previously, he didn't feel anything when he heard Chu Wuming's words, but today, he had just arrived at the Imperial Palace and saw Chu Wuming suffer several setbacks. It was clear that he had been forced to the edge of a cliff by his 2 older brothers. Even the Imperial guards in the palace, as well as the people from the temple, did not place Chu Wuming in their eyes. Sigh. After sighing softly, Xiaochen saw that Chu Wuming was about to get angry again. He stepped forward and pulled him back with a smile. "Your Highness, there is no need to get angry. Leave the rest to me. I have received Your Highness's favor a few days ago. Today, let Xiaochen vent Your Highness's resentment. This can also be considered as Xiaochen's proof of allegiance to Your Highness." He advised Chu Wuming not to get angry and leave everything to him. Hearing this, Chu Wuming said apologetically, "Brother Xiaochen, you." "Sigh, this is this prince's incompetence. Brother Xiao has been humiliated." "Ha, it's fine. Your Highness, please wait for a moment. Today, Xiaochen will definitely give Your Highness a satisfactory proof of allegiance to repay Your Highness for recognizing my worth." After hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiaochen laughed heartily. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 373. Xiaochen didn't take it to heart that Chu Wuming was looked down upon and that they were obstructed along the way. He just lamented that Chu Wuming was doing too badly. Just from the things that happened in the short 2 hours after entering the palace, Chu Wuming was simply too weak compared to his 2 elder brothers. It seemed that Chu Wuming wasn't exaggerating when he said that he was on the verge of being eliminated in Moontrace City. Xiaochen signaled Chu Wuming not to be angry, then went to the Burning Sky ruler's side and whispered something to him. When he heard Xiaochen's words, the Burning Sky ruler nodded slightly. He didn't know what Xiaochen was going to do, but since Xiaochen asked him to wait for a moment, Chu Wuming could only wait where he was. Xiaochen finished speaking to the Burning Sky ruler. As Xiaochen finished speaking, the Burning Sky ruler took a step forward and a terrifying aura immediately soared into the sky from his body. A terrifying pressure spread out from the Burning Sky ruler's body. This was the pressure that belonged to a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty. Along with the appearance of this pressure, the expressions of the Imperial guards around the Martial He Palace changed drastically. Their bodies were forcefully pressed down to their knees uncontrollably. This pressure was simply too terrifying. Even Chu Wuming's face instantly turned pale. At the same time, within the Marshali Palace, the Moonless Empire's Emperor Chu Mu, who was originally discussing matters with the two princes, had a huge change in expression. He looked out of the palace and said, "This is a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty. A Dao Emperor Realm Almighty has arrived at the palace." As the Moonless Empire's Emperor, Chu Mu was also a Dao Sovereign expert. At this moment, through the aura that the Burning Sky Ruler emitted, Chu Mu immediately sensed that this person was a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty. When they heard their imperial father's words, the first Prince Chu Wok and second Prince Chu Wushuang were shocked. A Dao Emperor Realm Almighty had arrived at the palace. This was definitely a huge matter. When the aura spread out, it immediately attracted Chu Mu's attention. He couldn't care less about the matters he was discussing with the two princes and strode out of the Marshali Palace. When he saw Chu Wuming outside the palace, Chu Mu was first stunned, but he quickly shifted his gaze to the Burning Sky Ruler with a wisp of surprise in his eyes. Chu Mu strode before the Burning Sky Ruler and cupped his hands together and bowed. "May I know why Senior Dao Emperor has come to my Moonless Empire?" Chu Wuming's eyes. After all, the Moonless Empire also had Dao Emperor Realm Almighty. If the Burning Sky Ruler had come with ill intentions, the two retired emperors wooded the two retired emperors two retired emperors to the two retired emperors. Chu Mu cupped his hands and bowed. The first Prince Chu Wok and second Prince Chu Wushuang who followed behind him looked at their third brother, Chu Wuming. A Dao Emperor Realm Almighty had suddenly appeared, and Chu Wuming just so happened to be here. For a moment, Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang seemed to have guessed something. Their expressions were slightly unsightly, but they didn't say anything. The Burning Sky Ruler didn't pay any attention to Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang at all. He looked indifferently at Chu Mu and said in a flat tone, "We were invited by the third prince to the imperial capital, but we didn't expect to be turned away. It looks like your Moonless Empire's imperial family really doesn't treat guests well." After being invited by the third prince and hearing the Burning Sky Ruler's words, Chu Mu's gaze couldn't help but look at Chu Wuming. Although it was just a simple sentence, Chu Mu had already heard the clues within. Now, the battle for the position of Crown Prince between Chu Wuming and his brothers was becoming more and more intense. Chu Wuming, who didn't have the support of a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty, could have been said to be eliminated. But now, Chu Wuming had actually brought back a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty. As such, Chu Wuming's goal was naturally very clear. He wanted to introduce the Burning Sky Ruler to the imperial family. His expression was a little complicated. As his father, Chu Wuming never expected that Chu Wuming would have actually found a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty outside and even brought him back to the imperial capital. Just as Chu Mu fell into silence, the Burning Sky Ruler looked indifferently at the horizon. His tone was still indifferent as he said, "Have you seen enough? Isn't it a little embarrassing to hide at the side and not show yourself?" There were still people hiding in the sky. As the Burning Sky Ruler spoke, two figures indeed appeared in the sky. When they saw these two people, everyone present bowed. Needless to say, these two people were the two Dao Emperors of the imperial family's Chu clan. These two Dao Emperors were both white-haired old men. After they appeared, one of them looked at the Burning Sky Ruler and said, "You want to participate in the battle for the position of Crown Prince of my Moonless Empire? In order to help His Highness the Third Prince?" They didn't waste their breath. As soon as these two Dao Emperors appeared, they directly went straight to the point. When he heard this, the Burning Sky Ruler said indifferently, "His Highness the Third Prince has some relationship with my nephew. I'm unable to refuse his request." As he spoke, the Burning Sky Ruler looked at Xiao Chen. When they heard the Burning Sky Ruler bluntly say that he'd come to help His Highness the Third Prince fight for the position of Crown Prince, a wisp of rage flashed in the eyes of Chu Wushuang and Chu Wok. They thought in their hearts, "Damnable Chu Wuming. Exactly what sort of dog's hit luck does he have to actually be able to get a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty to help him?" When they thought about how if Chu Wuming really obtained the help of a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty, then the situation would change completely, and Chu Wuming, who should have been eliminated, would obviously rise from the ashes. Chu Wok and Chu Wok felt a wave of rage in their hearts. If it was really like this, then wouldn't the three of them become a situation of a tripartite confrontation? In this way, the ownership of the position of Crown Prince would definitely become even more complicated and confusing. Obviously, he was unwilling to see another Dao Emperor Realm Almighty appear behind Chu Wuming. At this moment, the second prince, Chu Wushuang, took a step forward and looked Burning Sky Ruler in the eyes as he said indifferently, "Senior, you're not a member of my imperial family, so I'm afraid it's not suitable for you to interfere in the internal affairs of our imperial family, right?" He was unwilling to see another Dao Emperor Realm Almighty appear behind Chu Wuming. In this way, Chu Wushuang naturally had no choice but to stop Burning Sky Ruler from interfering and use the fact that he wasn't a member of the imperial family to make Burning Sky Ruler withdraw in the face of difficulties. Chu Wushuang's plan was very good. However, he'd overlooked a problem, and it was that he was facing a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty right now. Even with his status, he couldn't casually interrupt. Sure enough, as soon as Chu Wushuang finished speaking, Burning Sky Ruler glanced indifferently at him, and then he casually swung his arm and slapped Chu Wushuang from afar, causing Chu Wushuang to be directly slapped flying. "Shut up! How can you interrupt when I'm speaking?" Burning Sky Ruler spoke indifferently after he slapped Chu Wushuang flying. On the other hand, no matter if it was Chu Mu or the two Dao Emperors of the Chu clan in the sky, none of them spoke when they saw this. Chu Wushuang was really quite disrespectful because he actually dared to interrupt a conversation between Dao Emperors. He really deserved a beating. Begging to be collected, begging to be recommended. Chapter 374. It was understandable that Chu Wushuang wanted to stop the Heaven Scorching Ruler from entering the imperial family. After all, if he had the Heaven Scorching Ruler's support, then Chu Wuming wouldn't have to fear him and Chu Wok at all. However, Chu Wushuang seemed to be too impatient to stop all of this from happening. Especially at a time like this, even though he was a prince, it was clearly not his place to speak. After slapping Chu Wushuang flying, no matter if it was Chu Mu or the two Dao Emperors of the imperial family, none of them spoke to stop him. As far as they were concerned, Chu Wushuang really did deserve to be slapped for speaking carelessly just now. There was a bright red palm print on his right cheek. The Heaven Scorching Ruler hadn't utilized any spirit energy in that slap, nor had he thought about taking Chu Wushuang's life. He knew that he'd spoken wrongly, so even though Chu Wushuang was extremely furious, he didn't dare say another word. At the same time, the two Dao Emperors in the sky descended before the Heaven Scorching Ruler, and one of them looked at the Heaven Scorching Ruler as he spoke. "You intend to interfere in the internal strife of my imperial family. In this way, you intend to join my imperial family's Chu clan and become a supreme emperor just like the two of us to protect my Chu clan?" "That's what I intend." The Heaven Scorching Ruler replied indifferently when he heard this. "In that case, may I know if you've joined any other sect or power?" The Dao Emperor of the Chu clan continued to ask. The two Dao Emperors of the Chu clan actually didn't care about the competition for the position of Crown Prince. The reason they'd chosen to support Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang was because they felt that they were more suitable to become the Crown Prince. In any case, so long as a Dao Emperor was present, then the Moonless Empire wouldn't collapse. This was beyond doubt. When facing the Heaven Scorching Ruler that Chu Wuming had found, the two of them were most concerned about two things. Firstly, whether Chu Wushuang would join the imperial family and become a guardian of the Moonless Empire. Secondly, whether there were any other powers standing behind the Heaven Scorching Ruler. If there were, then the two of them would probably have to worry a little more. Actually, at the Dao Emperor realm, they didn't take the position of Crown Prince that Chu Wuming and the others were fighting for seriously any longer. Perhaps in the opinion of others, the Crown Prince was an unreachable existence, but in the eyes of great figures at the Dao Emperor realm, not to mention the Crown Prince, even the Emperor, Chu Mu, was nothing. In the hearts of these old fellows, the only thing they cared about was the illusory divine path and the safety of the Moonless Empire. Other than that, they did not care about anything else. It was precisely because of this that the two Dao Emperors of the Chu clan didn't resist the Heaven Scorching Ruler too much. Conversely, they were slightly delighted. If they were really able to obtain a Tao Emperor to join them, then it would undoubtedly be an extremely great increase to the strength of the Moonless Empire. Knowing what the two of them were thinking, the ruler of the Burning Sky Empire indifferently replied, "I've lived my entire life as my home and have never joined any forces. I only have a few like-minded friends following me. So, the two of you can rest assured about my identity." The third prince is very clear on this point. "Moreover, if it weren't for my nephew, I wouldn't have come to the imperial capital." The heaven-scorching ruler was an independent cultivator and didn't have any power standing behind him. When they heard this, the two Tao emperors of the Chu clan glanced at each other, and a wisp of happiness could be seen in each other's eyes. A Tao Emperor realm expert who didn't belong to a sect was absolutely great news to the Moonless Empire. At the same time, they looked at the heaven-scorching ruler, and the person who spoke earlier immediately said with a smile, "Then it's truly a blessing from my Moonless Empire. May I know your name?" When these words were spoken, it clearly represented that the two retired emperors had accepted the heaven-scorching ruler. Although they didn't know much about the heaven-scorching ruler, they would first tie him to the Moonless Empire. As for the rest, they would talk about it in the future. This was the two retired emperors' plan. "Fellow Taoists, you can call me heaven-scorching ruler." The heaven-scorching ruler replied. "So it's fellow Taoist heaven-scorching ruler. I'm Chu Qingshan, and this is Chu Mubai. From today onwards, fellow Taoist heaven-scorching ruler will be the same as the two of us, the retired emperor of the Moonless Empire." After learning the heaven-scorching ruler's name, Chu Qingshan immediately announced. With his words, the heaven-scorching ruler would be the third retired emperor of the Moonless Empire from today onwards. Of course, to become the retired emperor of the Moonless Empire, there was naturally a whole set of procedures. Moreover, there was also a large-scale heaven bestowment ceremony, which implied that this was a gift from the heavens to the protector of the Moonless Empire. Without needing Chu Qingshan to say more, the adjacent Chumu took the initiative to speak. "Junior will begin preparing for senior heaven bestowment ceremony." As the emperor, in front of the heaven-scorching ruler and the other two, Chumu didn't dare to call himself emperor. Hearing Chumu's words, Chu Qingshan faintly nodded. "That's good. Fellow Taoist heaven-scorching ruler, let's leave the following matters to the younger generation to handle. The two of us still have some things to discuss with fellow Taoist heaven-scorching ruler." The matter had already come to an end. Chu Qingshan also wanted to invite the heaven-scorching ruler to leave. The conversation between the three of them clearly wasn't suitable to be said in front of everyone. Knowing Chu Qingshan's intentions, the heaven-scorching ruler turned to look at Xiao Chen. Seeing this, the nearby Chu Wuming very perceptively bowed and said, "Senior, don't worry. Junior will arrange things for brother Xiao Chen and senior Zhang Qi." The heaven-scorching ruler wanted to leave with Chu Qingshan and the other two, while Xiao Chen and Zhang Qi would be arranged by Chu Wuming. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, the heaven-scorching ruler faintly nodded, and then disappeared on the spot with Chu Qingshan and the other two. The three Tao emperors had finally left. Everyone present here heaved sighs of relief in their hearts because the pressure they endured when they were with the three Tao emperors was extremely enormous, and it seemed as if even breathing had become difficult for them. At the same time, Chumu also looked at Chu Wuming. Chumu really had a whole new level of respect for this son of his today. Originally, even Chumu thought that Chu Wuming definitely had no fate with the position of crown prince. Not only were his two elder brothers too powerful, and they weren't existences he could contend against at all, but who would have imagined that after a trip to Moontrace City and hosting the Moontrace Conference, Chu Wuming would actually bring back a Tao Emperor. At this moment, this Tao Emperor had already become the third retired emperor of the Moonless Empire. With the support of the heaven-scorching ruler, Chu Wuming had the confidence to compete with his two elder brothers for the position of crown prince once more. For a moment, Chumu's feelings became somewhat complicated. He didn't know whether it was right or wrong for him to not personally confer the title of crown prince and instead let his sons compete with each other. For the position of crown prince, Chumu knew that his sons had already reached a state of mutual hostility. Everyone wanted to sit on the position of crown prince. After several years of competition, the other princes had all been eliminated. Presently, only Chu Wuming and the other two remained. However, the competition between the three of them was the most accumulated. Especially from today onwards, this kind of competition would probably only become more and more intense. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 375. Any father would hope for his son to become a talent and a dragon. This was the wish of every father. However, to Chu Mu, it was precisely because every son he had was extremely outstanding that led to the current situation. There was only one emperor's position, and there was also only one crown prince's position. However, he, Chu Mu, had a total of 9 sons and 4 daughters. There was no need to mention his daughters. However, these 9 sons of his gave Chu Mu both pride and a headache. Especially Chu Wok, Chu Wushuang, and Chu Wuming. Every one of them had outstanding abilities and were completely worthy of the title of crown prince. However, as the saying goes, a mountain cannot contain 2 tigers. It was precisely because he had such outstanding sons that the 3 of them coveted the crown prince's throne. With such outstanding people coveting the crown prince's throne at the same time, if Chu Mu were to confer the title to one of them, the other 2 would not be convinced. Because he knew that the 3 of them would not easily give up the crown prince's throne, Chu Mu decided to let them fight for it themselves. That way, no one would have any complaints about the one who could successfully ascend the crown prince's throne. Chu Mu thought in his heart. However, there was one thing that Chu Mu did not realize. As a father, there was nothing wrong with his actions. However, as an emperor, his actions were extremely dangerous. Princes fighting for power was something that could shake the foundation of the empire. If it were any other emperor, they would not have made such a choice. Instead, they would have conferred the crown prince's throne. As for the other princes who were not convinced, they would have been abolished. However, Chu Mu clearly could not do this. All of the princes were his sons. If he wanted to lay his hands on any of them, Chu Mu could not do it. It was precisely because he was soft-hearted towards all of the princes that it created the current chaotic situation of the princes fighting for power in the Moonless Empire. Taking a deep look at Chu Wuming, Chu Mu did not say anything and turned to leave. Seeing Chu Wuming slowly leaving, the emperor of the Moonless Empire, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a strange light. Although he didn't have much contact with Chu Mu, just based on his attitude towards Chu Wuming and the other 2, this person wasn't suitable to be an emperor. Chu Mu's heart was too soft, especially towards his own family and descendants. The most ruthless were the royal family. This was a saying that had been passed down since ancient times, and this saying was indeed not without reason. As an emperor, it was okay to have a kind heart, but a weak character was not desirable. Allowing the princes to fight for power was a huge mistake. Furthermore, from the looks of it, Chu Mu did not seem to have any intention of stopping them. He was too soft-hearted and didn't have the decisiveness of a monarch. That was why Xiao Chen said that Chu Mu wasn't suitable to sit on the supreme throne. Of course, Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't say these words to anyone else. Following Chu Mu's departure, Chu Wuming's gaze locked onto the 2 people from the temple who had stopped him earlier. Sensing Chu Wushuang's gaze, the 2 people from the temple immediately changed their expressions. However, before they could say anything, Chu Wuming coldly shouted. 2 dog slaves, you even dare to stop me? If I don't execute the 2 of you on the spot, where will I put my face in the future? Men, take down these 2 dog slaves who have no respect for their superiors. As soon as Chu Mu left, Chu Wuming immediately started to make things difficult. As for who his target was, it was without a doubt directed at Chu Wushuang. He already knew that the 2 people from the temple were Chu Wushuang's people. Now that Chu Wuming wanted to kill them on the spot, it was undoubtedly sending a message to Chu Wushuang: in the future, I, Chu Wuming, am no longer someone you can casually bully. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, the imperial guards behind him took large strides forward, wanting to take down the 2 people. However, at this moment, Chu Wushuang stood out and shouted. Chu Wuming, what do you mean? This is Wuyi Palace, not a place for you to be impudent. Chu Wushuang stepped out to stop him. Of course, he couldn't let Chu Wuming kill the two people from the temple. It wasn't that their lives were important, but it was a matter of face. If he allowed Chu Wuming to kill the two people from the temple today, then he, Chu Wushuang, would lose all face. The two brothers glared at each other. Faced with Chu Wushuang's obstruction, Chu Wuming coldly laughed and said, "Second brother, these two servants have no respect for their elders. Today, I want to restore the hierarchy. Why is second brother stopping me?" Chu Wuming, don't think that this consort doesn't know what you're thinking. Let me tell you, with me here today, don't even think about being impudent. Chu Wuming's words, Chu Wushuang angrily shouted. Obviously, he wouldn't step aside. Seeing this, Chu Wuming turned to look at Xiao Chen. They looked at each other and soon understood Chu Wuming's intention. He wanted Zhang Qi to kill them. Faced with Chu Wushuang's obstruction, Chu Wushuang had his own guards around. Therefore, only Zhang Qi, a super expert in the Tao Master realm, could kill the two people from the temple under Chu Wushuang's protection. Understanding Chu Wuming's intention, Xiao Chen also stood up and nodded slightly. Seeing this, Zhang Qi stepped out and instantly passed by Chu Wushuang. As a super expert in the Tao Master realm, if Zhang Qi wanted to kill, naturally no one present could stop her. Without any hesitation, she gently pointed two fingers. At the same time, Chu Wushuang behind her shouted angrily, "Chu Wuming, are you going to fight me to the death?" Seeing that Chu Wuming still killed the two people from the temple even though he had already stepped forward to stop him, Chu Wushuang's anger could be imagined. Hearing Chu Wushuang's words, Chu Wuming sneered and said, "Fight me to the death? Second brother, you have to think carefully. If you fight with me now, I'm afraid you have no chance of winning." Chu Wuming was no longer the same as before. Now, Chu Wushuang was not afraid of Chu Wushuang at all. Hearing this, Chu Wushuang's face immediately became gloomy and uncertain. Indeed, he had no chance of winning if he fought with Chu Wuming now. After all, Chu Wuming had Zhang Qi, a super expert in the Tao Master realm, by his side, while Chu Wushuang did not. Once they started fighting, Zhang Qi alone was enough to kill him easily. Chu Wushuang's heart was filled with hatred, but his reason kept telling him that Chu Wuming was not the same as before. He had the ability to fight with him. Seeing that Chu Wushuang was silent with a face full of anger, Chu Wuming's smile became brighter and brighter. "Second brother, you really reminded me just now. Do you think that if I kill you now, I will have one less opponent in the future?" An extremely obscure killing intent flashed in his eyes. Hearing this, Chu Wushuang's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Chu Wuming in surprise. Although he did not think that Chu Wuming would really dare to kill him in front of Wua Palace, he was still worried. If Chu Wuming went crazy, he would be in danger. Realizing the danger, Chu Wushuang snorted coldly and said, "Humph, let's wait and see." Then, without waiting for Chu Wuming to reply, he immediately left with his people. Chapter 376. He didn't stop Chu Wushuang from leaving. Although Chu Wuming could easily kill Chu Wushuang, he couldn't. Even if he wanted to kill Chu Wushuang, he couldn't let others know that he was the one who did it. Otherwise, even if Chu Wushuang died, Chu Wuming wouldn't have a good ending. At that time, not to mention his father, even Chu Qingshan probably wouldn't let Chu Wuming off. Similarly, he knew that it was impossible for Chu Wuming to kill Chu Wushuang under such circumstances, so Xiao Chen didn't say anything. Now that the Burning Sky ruler had successfully become the retired emperor of the Moonless Empire, Xiao Chen's next step was to build a new heavenly stellar residence in the imperial capital. Then, he would let the people of Moontrace City move to the imperial capital. Here, they would obviously be able to enjoy better cultivation resources. At the same time, after the new heavenly stellar residence was built in the imperial capital, Xiao Chen could use Chu Wuming's power to start searching for other heavenly stellar continent cultivators within the Moonless Empire. A total of 50,000 people came to the Heavenly River continent, and the Moonless Empire was extremely large. It wasn't smaller than a region of the Heavenly Stellar continent. Xiao Chen didn't believe that only a few dozen people were teleported to the Moonless Empire. there must be other heavenly stellar continent cultivators within the Moonless Empire. Gathering everyone was Xiao Chen's second goal. He was already planning his next step in his heart. At the same time, after Chu Wushuang left, Chu Wok, who hadn't said anything all this time, came to Chu Wuming as if nothing had happened. He congratulated Chu Wuming with a smile. "Third brother is really impressive. You were actually able to rope in a Dao Emperor realm expert for the imperial family. Looks like the position of Crown Prince will probably belong to third brother." Chu Wok actually congratulated Chu Wuming. Of course, these words weren't sincere, and Chu Wuming could tell. Among the three brothers, Chu Wushuang's temper was the most violent, and Chu Wok was the most ruthless. On the surface, he would talk and laugh with you, but you would never know when such a person would stab you with a knife. As the saying goes, a smiling tiger refers to a person like Chu Wok. He may have already set up a killing trap while talking and laughing. It was also because of Chu Wok's personality that Chu Wuming had always been extremely wary of him. If one were to only talk about ruthlessness, it was likely that none of his brothers could compare to Chu Wok. Chu Wuming cupped his hands slightly towards Chu Wok, and said with a fake smile, "Big brother, you must be joking. Compared to Big Brother, my little achievement is nothing. It's Big Brother who gave in to us brothers. Otherwise, the position of Crown Prince would have been in Big Brother's hands long ago, and we might not even exist in this world anymore." Chu Wuming's words hinted at Chu Wok's ruthlessness, but Chu Wok acted as if he didn't notice it at all, and continued to smile as he said, "Haha, third brother still likes to joke as much as before. Alright, third brother, you must be tired from your journey, so Big Brother won't disturb you any longer. Come to my palace to drink some other day. It's been a long time since the two of us drank together. Next time, we must not return until we're drunk." As he spoke, Chu Wok strode away. However, when he arrived in front of Xiao Chen, Chu Wok actually smiled and nodded at Xiao Chen. At the same time, he smiled and spoke. "This friend also has an imposing appearance. If there's time in the future, this prince will definitely pay you a visit personally, haha." Even though he knew that Xiao Chen was Chu Wuming's man, Chu Wok still expressed his intention to rope him in without hiding anything. Hearing his words, Xiao Chen only nodded slightly and didn't say anything. Chu Wushuang and Chu Wok left one after another. Chu Wuming also came to Xiao Chen's side and said in a soft voice, "Brother Xiao Chen, you must be careful of Chu Wok. This person has always been extremely ruthless. If he gets the chance, even if it's me, he won't hesitate to kill me." Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiao Chen nodded and replied, "Yes, Your Highness, don't worry. Since I came to the imperial capital for Your Highness, I naturally won't do anything that betrays you." "Brother Xiao Chen, what are you saying?" "I naturally trust Brother Xiao." "Alright, let's not talk about this. Brother Xiao Chen, please follow me back to the palace. In the next few days, I'll have someone find a residence in the city for Brother Xiao. I'm afraid that I'll have to trouble Brother Xiao to temporarily stay at my place for a few days." As a prince, Chu Wuming's residence was naturally within the imperial palace. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiao Chen laughed and said, "Then I'll have to trouble Your Highness. However, if we're looking for a residence, I hope that Your Highness can find a larger residence for me. I want to call my brothers from Moontrace City to the imperial capital. This way, they can be of more help to Your Highness. Of course, the cost of buying a residence will be borne by Xiao Chen." "Brother Xiao, what are you saying?" "There's no need for Brother Xiao to worry. I'll definitely find a large residence for you in the imperial capital." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Chu Wuming said clearly. Naturally, he couldn't let Xiao Chen spend money. Under Chu Wuming's lead, Xiao Chen and the other two walked towards his residence. Just as Xiao Chen and the others left Wua Palace, in a bamboo garden deep within the imperial palace, the Burning Sky ruler, Chu Qingshan, and Chu Mubai sat across from each other. They drank light tea as they spoke. "Fellow Burning Sky, I have a question that I don't know if it's appropriate to ask." Looking at the Burning Sky ruler, Chu Mubai said. "Fellow Mubai is too courteous." "There's no harm in asking," said the Burning Sky ruler. "Then I'll say it. Dare I ask fellow Burning Sky, if the Moonless Empire is in trouble in the future, would fellow Burning Sky be willing to help the Moonless Empire repel the enemy? Asked Chu Bai. This was the question he and Chu Qingshan were most concerned about. If the Burning Sky ruler didn't intend to help the Moonless Empire, then his usefulness would be greatly reduced. Knowing Chu Bai's meaning, the Burning Sky ruler faintly smiled. Fellow Mubai, please don't worry. Since I'm the retired emperor of the Moonless Empire, I naturally have the responsibility to protect the Moonless Empire. If the empire truly is in danger, I'll naturally take action. While he was the retired emperor of the Moonless Empire, the Burning Sky ruler would fulfill his responsibility to protect the empire. Hearing this, Chu Bai and Chu Qingshan's expressions eased up a lot. As long as he said this, it was enough. As for anything else, Chu Bai and Chu Qingshan didn't care. That day, they chatted a lot with Chu Bai and Chu Qingshan, including the matter of the princes fighting for the position of Crown Prince. Regarding this battle for the position of Crown Prince, Chu Bai and Chu Qingshan's intentions were clear. The Burning Sky ruler could choose to support the third prince, but try not to directly interfere. This was because once the matter involved the Dao Emperor Realm Almighty, it wouldn't be easy to control. This was also why Chu Bai and Chu Qingshan, one of whom supported the first Prince Chu Wok, and the other supported the second Prince Chu Wushuang, had never directly interfered in the battle for the position of Crown Prince. The Burning Sky ruler naturally didn't refuse Chu Bai and Chu Qingshan's words. A Dao Emperor Realm Almighty was indeed unsuitable to directly participate in the battle for the position of Crown Prince. The existence of a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty was actually more of a symbol for the various princes to develop their forces. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 377. He chatted with Chu Qingshan for a long time. Of course, most of the topic was Chu Qingshan and Chu Qingshan testing whether or not the Burning Sky ruler was willing to protect the Moonless Empire. A retired emperor had supreme status and position in the Moonless Empire. While having such status and position, he naturally had to shoulder the responsibility of protecting the Moonless Empire. They seemed to be chatting casually, but in this conversation, the Burning Sky ruler acutely sensed that Chu Qingshan and Chu Bai weren't as united as they seemed on the surface. There was a bit of conflict between them. The Burning Sky ruler naturally didn't know that the conflict between Chu Qingshan and Chu Bai was no longer a secret in the imperial family. The two retired emperors had their own followers in the imperial family. The first Prince Chu Wok and second Prince Chu Wushuang were their disciples. Thus, it wasn't strange that Chu Qingshan and Chu Bai chose to support Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang. The imperial family wasn't as peaceful as one would imagine, especially after the conflict for the position of Crown Prince erupted. The entire imperial family was divided into several large factions, and these factions were currently crazily fighting for power. Facing the temptation of power, Chu Qingshan and Chu Bai didn't care because they already had supreme status and position. However, the younger generation below them couldn't. However, although they fought, Chu Qingshan and Chu Bai were extremely united against outsiders. Just like when they faced the Burning Sky ruler, the two of them were clearly grasshoppers on the same rope. At the same time, the most important point was that no matter what level a martial artist was at, they needed resources to cultivate. The further they went, the more resources they needed to cultivate. In the Moonless Empire, although the retired emperors would be provided with a considerable amount of cultivation resources every month, the distribution of resources naturally couldn't be completely equal. It could be said that before the Burning Sky ruler came, Chu Qingshan and Chu Bai's distribution of resources was pretty much based on the strength of their respective factions. Most importantly, the little bit of cultivation resources the imperial family provided to the retired emperor was utterly insufficient to fill the gaps between the teeth of a Dao Emperor realm expert. If he wanted even more cultivation resources, then he naturally could only ask his subordinates to search for them. As for how much he could find, it depended on the ability of his subordinates. It was also because of this that Chu Qingshan and Chu Bai would participate in the fight for the position of Crown Prince and support the first Prince Chu Wok and second Prince Chu Wuming. They weren't interested in the position of crown prince, but they needed people to help them find cultivation resources. After all, as a Dao Emperor realm expert, it was impossible for him to search for the cultivation resources he required himself, right? This was clearly unrealistic. Therefore, Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai supported Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang. Both sides took what they needed. Chu Qingshan and Chu Wushuang used Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang to find the resources they needed, while Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang used Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai to fight for the position of crown prince and control more power in the Moonless Empire. Having somewhat understood the way to survive in the Moonless Empire, the Burning Sky ruler had become the retired emperor of the Moonless Empire. Thus, the Burning Sky ruler naturally had to support a faction of his own. Otherwise, not only would the Burning Sky ruler obtain less cultivation resources than Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai, it would also be much more troublesome. Understanding this, the Burning Sky ruler already had an answer. Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai had already chosen the first prince Chu Wok and the second prince Chu Wushuang. Thus, the Burning Sky ruler naturally chose the third prince Chu Wuming. After chatting for a long time, an entire day later, the Burning Sky ruler finally left Chu Qingshan and Chu Wuming's place. Afterwards, he was personally brought to his residence by Chu Wuming. The Heavenly Stellar residence in the imperial capital was currently being built. The residence was naturally ready-made and had already been chosen. It was a large residence not far from the imperial palace, located in the heart of the imperial capital. The entire residence took up an enormous area. Compared to the Heavenly Stellar residence in Moontrace City, this residence was at least 5 times larger. Even if tens of thousands of people lived here, it wouldn't be crowded. There were gardens and courtyards everywhere, and the environment was extremely beautiful. Now, it only needed a bit of work to be able to move in. Presumably, it wouldn't take more than a few days. The construction of the new Heavenly Stellar residence was given to Chu Wuming to handle. With his abilities, such a small matter naturally wasn't a problem. In a short 3 days, Chu Wuming successfully completed the construction of the Heavenly Stellar residence. Xiaochen, Burning Sky ruler, and Zhang Qi personally went over. After circling around the imperial capital's Heavenly Stellar residence, Chu Wuming respectfully asked, "Is there anything Senior Burning Sky is dissatisfied with?" "Not bad, Zhang Qi, you can let Sikong Ming and the others leave." Hearing Chu Wuming's words, the Burning Sky ruler slightly nodded. This residence wasn't bad. Immediately after, he ordered Zhang Qi to let Sikong Ming and the others leave for the imperial capital. Seeing that the Burning Sky ruler was very satisfied with his arrangements, Chu Wuming secretly sighed in relief. Currently, the Burning Sky ruler was Chu Wuming's biggest backer, so he naturally didn't dare to displease the Burning Sky ruler. Respectfully bowing, Chu Wuming very sensibly said, "If that's the case, then this junior will no longer disturb Senior Fentian and Brother Xiaochen. This junior will take his leave first. If Senior Fentian has any instructions, please send someone to find me." Knowing that the Heavenly Stellar residence was successfully built, the Burning Sky ruler and the others obviously had something to say. At this time, if Chu Wuming continued to stay here and didn't leave, it would only annoy the Burning Sky ruler. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, the Burning Sky ruler slightly nodded, but he said indifferently, "I need some cultivation resources. Get me some." Now that he knew how to obtain more cultivation resources in the Moonless Empire, the Burning Sky ruler naturally wouldn't be polite at this time. Hearing this, Chu Wuming directly agreed without the slightest hesitation. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with the Burning Sky ruler's words. After all, the cultivation resources required by a Dao Emperor Realm Almighty was indeed an astronomical figure, and to support such consumption, relying on the cultivation resources provided by the imperial family was clearly insufficient. Moreover, although the imperial family had a treasury, many of them were useless to Dao emperors. If one wanted to obtain true treasures of heaven and earth, then one had to go to various places to search for or purchase them. In this way, Chu Wuming naturally played the role of running errands. Of course, it was impossible for Chu Wuming to go personally, but he could send someone below him. This would allow Chu Wuming to start searching for the various treasures of heaven and earth needed for his cultivation. Along with the establishment of the heavenly stellar residence in the imperial capital, the burning sky ruler's bestowment ceremony should be held in a few days. At that time, the imperial family would announce it to the world. In this way, the burning sky ruler would truly become the third retired emperor of the Moonless Empire, and Xiao Chen and the others could be said to have successfully established themselves in the imperial capital. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 378. In less than a day, Si Kongming brought everyone to the imperial capital. As for the heavenly stellar residence in the Moon Trace City, it was not abandoned. Instead, it was handed over to the old man rescued by Xiao Chen to look after. At last, they had successfully gained a foothold in the Moonless Empire. Now that the burning sky ruler was the retired emperor of the Moonless Empire, it could be said that everyone had begun to integrate into the Sky River continent. Time passed slowly. In these few days, Xiao Chen had also refined the 2 illusionary moon fruits one after another. Previously, he didn't have time. Now that he finally had some free time, Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't waste it. After refining 2 illusionary moon fruits in a row, Xiao Chen's spiritual power storage had increased by more than 10% compared to before. It was worthy of being called the most precious treasure of the Moonless Empire. It was no wonder that even a saint-rank family like Tianfeng Xingzong coveted the illusionary moon fruit. Although his cultivation had not broken through, his strength had increased. The only pity was that there were too few illusionary moon fruits. They only bore fruit once every 100 years, and there were so many people sharing them. Last time, Chu Wuming gave Xiao Chen 50 illusionary moon fruits. He had spent a lot of effort to obtain them, and he had accumulated them for a long time. He thought that if he had enough illusionary moon fruits, the spiritual power storage in his body would be close to that of a Tao Querying Realm martial artist. Of course, Xiao Chen didn't know that the more illusionary moon fruits you refined, the less effective it would be. It was basically impossible to refine them endlessly. Just as Xiao Chen finished refining the illusionary moon fruits, on this day, the imperial family finally sent news that the burning sky ruler's bliss ceremony was ready and would be held tomorrow. It was finally ready. However, neither Xiao Chen nor the burning sky ruler paid too much attention to the bliss ceremony. In everyone's opinion, the bliss ceremony was just a formality with no substantial benefits. However, Xiao Chen and the others didn't care, but all the tyrants in the imperial capital were stunned by this news. Previously, the imperial family did not reveal any information about the burning sky ruler, so the various tyrants in the imperial capital naturally did not know about the existence of the burning sky ruler. Now, the imperial family was going to hold the heavenly bestowal ceremony for the third retired emperor. When this news came out, the entire imperial capital, or even the entire empire, was in an uproar. All the clans were clearly aware of what the retired emperor of the Moonless Empire represented, and it was a Tao Emperor realm expert. Now that the imperial family was going to hold a heavenly bestowment ceremony, wouldn't it mean that another Tao Emperor realm expert had been born in the imperial family? All the aristocratic families were shaken, especially the aristocratic families in the imperial capital. Because they were the closest to the center of power, they were the first to receive news that others didn't know. At this moment, in various parts of the imperial capital, the 4 great prince mansions and the 8 great marquis mansions, these aristocratic families that were second only to the imperial family in the Moonless Empire gathered their elders to discuss the matter of the third retired emperor. Feng, Chen, Chu, and Wei were the 4 great prince mansions. Xiongji, Shu Chu, Xiangzhu, and Tong Liang were all secretly discussing the bliss ceremony. Especially the 4 great prince mansions, their forces were much stronger than the 8 great marquis. Compared to the 4 great prince mansions, although the 8 great marquis also had super experts in the Tao Master realm, they were much weaker in terms of quantity and quality. The Feng family, Chen family, Chu family, and Wei family, not only did the 4 great prince mansions have more than one super expert in the Tao Master realm, each family even had at least one super expert in the Tao Master realm. Just this point alone made the power of the 4 great prince mansions far from what the 8 great marquis could compare with. At this moment, in the main hall of the Feng family's courtyard, more than 10 core members of the Feng family were sitting together. Sitting in the main seat was the current patriarch of the Feng family, Feng Dan, who was also the Gong Prince of the Empire. His position was second only to the current emperor, Chu Mu, and could be said to be second only to the emperor. With a somewhat solemn expression, Feng Dan glanced at the people below and said in a deep voice, "We've already investigated clearly. This senior Fentian is indeed a Dao Emperor realm expert, but he seems to have been found by the 3rd prince. Indeed, as expected of a great prince mansions. In the Moonless Empire, as long as it was something they wanted to know, there was almost nothing they couldn't find out. It had only been a few hours, but the Gong Prince mansions had already thoroughly investigated the matter of Sovereign Fentian." When he heard Feng Dan, a middle-aged man who looked slightly similar to Feng Dan exhorted for a short moment before he spoke slowly. "Big brother, if this person was brought here by the 3rd prince, then the imperial capital will probably not be peaceful anymore. Perhaps our Gong Prince mansions should make preparations as soon as possible." The middle-aged man who spoke was Feng Dan's second brother, and everyone present nodded lightly when they heard this. Anyone could imagine that the 3rd prince, Chu Wuming, had suddenly brought a Dao Emperor realm expert into the imperial capital at this moment, and it was obvious what the 3rd prince's objective was. Originally, Chu Wuming, who didn't have the support of a Dao Emperor realm expert, could practically be considered to have been eliminated from the competition. But now, the 3rd prince had encountered some sort of luck to actually be able to rope in a Dao Emperor realm expert. In this way, the 3rd prince, Chu Wuming, would possess the qualifications to fight for the position of crown prince. However, Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang obviously wouldn't agree to this. In this way, the imperial capital would probably fall into chaos once more, and the various wealthy clans would probably have to choose a side once more. It wasn't just the Gong Prince's Feng clan that had realized that the imperial capital was about to fall into chaos once more. The other 3 prince clans, the Jin Prince's Chen clan, the Wu Prince's Chu clan, and the Yan Prince's Wei clan had realized it as well. Chu Wuming's rise was inevitable. In this way, he would definitely have to swiftly develop his own forces, whereas Chu Wuming's rise would definitely affect the interests of Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang. So, the struggle between the 3 brothers was probably unavoidable. Don't think that the position of crown prince was merely a competition between the 3 brothers of Chu Wuming. The forces that were involved practically covered the entire Moonless Empire. After all, the position of crown prince was the future emperor. At this moment, the competition between the 3 princes for the position of crown prince was simply a competition between the various wealthy clans of the Moonless Empire. For the sake of obtaining even more benefits in the future, the various clans had successively chosen to stand on different sides and support different princes. Once they were able to support the prince they'd chosen to ascend to the position of crown prince, then these clans would obviously be able to obtain enormous benefits as well. So, the competition for the position of crown prince wasn't just a competition between princes, and it was also a competition between the various factions of the Moonless Empire. Where there was competition, there would be benefits. When faced with such enormous benefits, which clan wouldn't be moved? Moreover, even if they weren't moved, as a wealthy clan of the Moonless Empire, how could they possibly stay out of it and not be affected by it? Begging for a monthly vote, begging for a recommendation. Chapter 379. It was precisely because the various great clans were unable to stay out of this matter that the sudden rise of Chu Wuming made the various great clans understand that the person who originally seemed to have been eliminated was now like a dark horse charging out of the encirclement. In this way, the 3 princes would probably have to face another reshuffling. In the Feng family of the Gong Prince's mansion, after some discussion, Feng Dan, as the head of the family, finally made the decision. Let's wait and see. There's no need to rush into a decision. The rise of the 3rd prince was inevitable, but the situation was still unclear, so the Feng family decided to wait and see. Like the Feng family, the other 3 princes' clans also chose to wait and see. the entire moonless empire was surging with undercurrents because of the appearance of the burning sky ruler. Although it was still calm on the surface, the real storm had already begun to brew in secret. However, Chu Wuming and the other two princes didn't make the slightest move in the face of such undercurrents. Everyone was very quiet. Since the three princes didn't make a move, the great clans naturally chose to bide their time. In the heavenly stellar residence, Chu Wuming came almost every day recently. If there wasn't anything important, he would chat idly with Xiao Chen. Back then, besides chatting, Chu Wuming had also sent a lot of cultivation resources. Although these cultivation resources weren't particularly precious and weren't of much use to the burning sky ruler, they were extremely helpful to the martial artists below, especially Xiao Chen. With Chu Wuming's cultivation resources, Xiao Chen's cultivation had already reached the limit of the sky realm. If he wanted to improve, he could only break through to the Dao Querying realm. However, if he wanted to break through to the Dao Querying realm, just the improvement of his spiritual power wasn't enough. He had to find his own martial Dao to succeed. Martial artists below the Dao Querying realm cultivated martial arts, while martial artists above the Dao Querying realm cultivated Dao. This was a well-known fact among all martial artists. Therefore, if he wanted to break through to the Dao Querying realm, he had to find his own martial Dao path. Sitting opposite Xiao Chen in the garden, Chu Wuming smiled at Xiao Chen and said, "Brother Xiao, I see that you are about to break through to the Dao Querying realm." "Indeed, but how can breaking through to the Dao Querying realm be so easy? This is a watershed between martial arts and Dao. Right now, cultivation resources are of little use to me. I can only rely on myself." Upon hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiao Chen shook his head helplessly. Breaking through to the Dao Querying realm was very difficult indeed. It was like a Dao Emperor realm expert breaking through to the Saint realm. Once he succeeded, he would soar into the sky. If he failed, then he could only be obliterated. Martial arts were superficial and one-sided, but Dao was all-encompassing. It was difficult to touch and even more difficult to explain. Therefore, many Heaven Realm martial artists were stuck at the Dao Querying realm for their entire lives. They did not break through until they died. This was because no one could help them pursue the martial Dao. They could only rely on their own comprehension. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Chu Wuming nodded slightly. However, he then said mysteriously, "Brother Xiao is right. It is indeed very difficult to break through to the Dao Querying realm. It is not something that can be achieved by just cultivating bitterly. However, I know a place that can give Brother Xiao at least an 80% chance of breaking through to the Dao Querying realm." "Oh." Upon hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiao Chen's interest was piqued. Chu Wuming did not beat around the bush. Facing Xiao Chen's gaze, he spoke. According to him, there was a secret realm in the Royal Academy of the Moonless Empire. This secret realm was an independent small world. Entering it was like entering an endless reincarnation. Inside, everyone seemed to have been reborn. They would start a new life and experience new things. Of course, all of this was fake. It was also in such a virtual reincarnation that warriors could better find their own martial arts path. Therefore, in the Moonless Empire, almost all Celestial Realm warriors would seek to break through to the Dao Querying realm here. This secret realm was called the Path of Dao by the royal family. Xiao Chen was naturally very interested in this. Although Xiao Chen could break through to the Dao Querying realm without using the Path of Dao, he would definitely waste a lot of time. Now, Chu Wuming had said that the Path of Dao would open in 5 days. As such, Xiao Chen was naturally willing to enter the Path of Dao. As for the conditions required to enter the Path of Dao, Xiao Chen was not worried at all. With Chu Wuming around, it was very easy to obtain a spot to enter the Path of Dao. After chatting with Xiao Chen for around 2 hours, Chu Wuming stood up and bid farewell. However, before he left, he reminded Xiao Chen that the blessings ceremony was tomorrow and that he should not forget the time. Xiao Chen smiled and nodded when he heard Chu Wuming's reminder. After sending off Chu Wuming, Xiao Chen continued to cultivate. A day passed very quickly. Early the next morning, the scorching sky ruler led Xiao Chen and Zhang Qi out of the heavenly stellar residence and hurried towards the royal palace. There was a heavenly platform in the royal palace that was specially used for various ceremonies. The blessings ceremony was naturally held there as well. The sky had only just brightened when the nobles and ministers of the Moonless Empire arrived one after another. Over 1,000 temple servants and palace maids bustled about. Below the heavenly platform, over 1,000 short tables and prayer mats had been set up for the various lords to sit. Every time a person arrived, there would be a sharp shout from the temple, and at the same time, a palace maid would lead them to their seat. Seeing that more and more people were arriving, all of the Moonless Empire's courtiers and noble families were gathered here today. The Blessings Hall, the retired emperor's coronation, this was the most important event in the entire Moonless Empire. No one dared to be absent. Just as everyone was taking their seats and chatting with each other, a sharp voice from the temple called out, "The Gong Prince has arrived." At this time, almost all of the officials and family heads had arrived, including the 8 great dukes, and now, it was finally the 4 great princes' turn. The first to arrive was the Gong Prince Feng Dan. Seeing the Gong Prince arrive, everyone saluted, and Feng Dan smiled and nodded in response. Following the Gong Prince's arrival, Jin Prince, Wu Prince, and Yen Prince also arrived in succession. The 4 of them were placed side by side at the front, slightly behind Chumu. At this time, the 4 great princes were sitting side by side. Wu Prince looked at the other 3 and smiled. "Today, my Moonless Empire has attracted another retired emperor. This is truly a gift from the heavens." "Ha, that's right." Looking at Wu Prince's appearance, "Could it be that you've already made your decision?" Hearing Wu Prince's words, Yen Prince smiled and replied, at the same time saying a sentence with deep meaning. "Could it be that the 3 of you have different thoughts from me?" Hearing Yen Prince's words, Wu Prince smiled. Following Wu Prince's words, the 4 great princes all laughed heartily, and then didn't say anything else. They were all experienced people, and all of them knew the true meaning of each other's words. Facing the upcoming battle for the position of Crown Prince, the 4 great princes' choice was surprisingly unanimous, and that was to wait and see. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 380. The arrival of the 4 great princes meant that all the nobles of the Moonless Empire had gathered below the Ascension platform. Just as everyone was patiently waiting for the heavenly bestowal ceremony to begin, the shrill voice of the temple staff rang out once again. "The first prince has arrived." The first prince, Chu Wok, had arrived. However, this was just the beginning. Just as Chu Wok stepped onto the Ascension platform, the voice of the temple staff rang out once again. "The second prince has arrived." "The third prince has arrived." The second prince, Chu Wushuang, and the third prince, Chu Wuming, arrived one after another. Following the arrival of the 3 princes, the 3 of them also gathered at the entrance of the Ascension platform. This was not the first time he had seen Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang, but Xiao Chen could clearly feel that the 3 brothers were really hostile when they were together. They did not come by themselves. Chu Wuming was accompanied by Xiao Chen, Zhang Qi, and Du Qingfeng. Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang also had 3 people by their side. 4 of them were Dao sovereigns like Zhang Qi, while the other 2 were young men. They seemed to be around the same age as Xiao Chen. Ignoring the 4 Dao sovereigns, Xiao Chen's gaze immediately landed on the 2 young men who were following Chu Wushuang and Chu Wok. Xiao Chen was able to sense that both of them were at the celestial being realm at the Great Fulfillment. However, despite their apparent cultivation, Xiao Chen still sensed a hint of danger from both of them. These 2 should be the core disciples of the Tianfeng Xingzong that Chu Wuming had mentioned. They were indeed very strong. At the very least, they were not any weaker than Xiao Chen and the other 10 great prides. These 2 could be considered the strongest people of the same generation that Xiao Chen had met since coming to the Tiana continent. It was no wonder that Chu Wuming did not have anyone who could fight against them. Xiao Chen sized up the 2 of them. At the same time, the 2 of them were also sizing up Xiao Chen. A strange look flashed across their eyes. As great prides, their instincts were clearly very sharp. The two of them also felt a hint of danger from Xiaochen. They thought to themselves, when did Chu Wuming have such a person by his side? Xiaochen and the other two didn't say anything. Instead, it was Chu Wok and his two brothers who were chatting happily. Chu Wok cupped his hands and congratulated Chu Wuming. Haha, congratulations, third brother. Big brother, where did this joy come from? Hearing Chu Wok's words, Chu Wuming lightly smiled and said, third brother, are you pretending you don't know anything? Today is Senior Fan Tian's heavenly bestowal ceremony. After the ceremony, won't third brother have your own backing? This way, your second brother will not be able to bully you as he pleases in the future, Chu Wok replied with a smile. With a single sentence, he directed the flames of war to Chu Wushuang. You're speaking as if you haven't done anything to him before. Chu Wok, don't think that I don't know about the rotten things you've done. Stop trying to drive a wedge between us. As expected, Chu Wushuang coldly snorted after hearing Chu Wok's words. The three brothers could be said to be locked in a fierce battle. None of them believed the other. After a series of meaningless bickering, the three brothers brought their people to the heavenly ascension stage. As princes, the actions of the three brothers were naturally second only to Chu Mu. The four great princes were seated behind Chu Mu on the left, while Chu Wuming and his brothers were seated behind Chu Mu on the right. Moreover, it was not only the three of them who were present. There were other princes and palace masters as well. Chu Mu had a total of 9 sons and 4 daughters. Today was the heavenly bestowal palace, so all the princes and princesses had to come. After Chu Wuming and his brothers were seated, the other princes and palace masters also arrived one after another. Sitting behind Chu Wuming, side by side with Zhang Qi and Du Chengfeng, Xiaochen looked at the princes that arrived one after another. After a simple observation, he discovered that the other princes were indeed lacking compared to Chu Wuming and his brothers. It was no wonder that they had already withdrawn from the battle for the position of crown prince. In front of Chu Wuming and his brothers, they indeed did not have any right to speak. Indifferently looking at everything in front of him, Xiaochen discovered that the various princes were clearly divided into different camps. For example, the 7th prince was clearly closer to Chu Wuming. Clearly, he was standing in the same camp as Chu Wuming. Perhaps it was because of this that the 7th prince was rather respectful to him. After greeting Chu Wuming, he even specially cupped his hands and bowed. This must be Senior Xiaochen. I've heard about you from my third brother. Your Highness is too courteous. Faced with the 7th prince's bow, Xiaochen calmly replied. He did not have much contact with the 7th prince. After all the princes and princesses had arrived, Chu Mu finally appeared. Afterwards, Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai, the 2 retired emperors, appeared in the sky at the same time and sat cross-legged in the air. They were also Dao emperors. Their status was the same as the burning sky ruler, so they were on the same level as the heaven ascension platform. Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai sat cross-legged in the sky, while Chu Mu led all the nobles to sit below the heaven ascension platform. Then, accompanied by the sound of a bell, the burning sky ruler's figure appeared on the heaven ascension platform. The heaven ascension platform's appearance was very simple. It was just an ordinary platform with a simple appearance. However, the materials used were extremely extraordinary. They were all constructed from the high-quality and expensive 100-spirit jade. With the appearance of the burning sky ruler, the bestowal ceremony officially began. The entire process was known beforehand. At the beginning, it was to worship the heavens and thank the heavens for their bestowal to the Moonless Empire. After that, it was the conferring ceremony. Chu Mu personally read the words bestowed by the heavens and conferred the burning sky ruler as the 3rd retired emperor of the Moonless Empire. From today onwards, he would bear the responsibility of being the protector of the Moonless Empire. The etiquette was very complicated. From start to finish, it took a full 4 hours before the bestowal ceremony finally ended. In front of all the nobles, the burning sky ruler officially became the 3rd retired emperor of the Moonless Empire. Everyone congratulated him. However, at the same time, everyone knew very well that the situation of the Moonless Empire would probably undergo a huge change. It would change from a battle between two tigers to a tripartite confrontation in the future. As such, no one knew who would obtain the position of Crown Prince in the end. Everyone had their own ulterior motives. After the ceremony ended, Chumu announced the start of the banquet. At the same time, he gave amnesty to everyone. Soon, the maidservants came in with plates of spirit fruits, desserts, and meat. Everyone began to celebrate under the Heaven Ascension platform. On the surface, everyone was very happy, including Chumu. However, this was clearly only on the surface. In reality, everyone felt that this bestowal ceremony wouldn't end so easily. After all, the first prince and second prince couldn't just watch as Chu Wuming grew bigger. As expected, when the banquet was halfway through, the second prince, Chu Wushuang, stood up and shouted, "Everyone, today is the Burning Sky Retired Emperor's bestowal ceremony. It's a joyous day for my Moonless Empire. Just drinking wine is a bit boring. I suggest that we set up a stage so that everyone can compare notes with each other. Firstly, it can show the strength of my Moonless Empire. Secondly, it can also be used to congratulate my Moonless Empire in advance. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation." Chapter 381. As soon as Chu Wushuang said this, the hearts of everyone present froze. As expected, Chu Wushuang clearly wouldn't allow Chu Wuming to rise so easily. Even if he couldn't stop him, he could still disgust him a little. Everyone present was either a court official who held great authority or the patriarch of a powerful clan. They were all experienced figures, so how could they not understand Chu Wushuang's intentions when they heard Chu Wushuang's words? Building an arena for everyone to spar. These words could deceive a 3-year-old child, but everyone present was famous and influential. How could they personally go up and spar at such a time? Moreover, even if they went up, who would they represent? This was clearly a battle between the 3 princes. If you went up, it would naturally mean that you represented one of the princes. It was precisely because of this that no one would go up on this arena. Of course, Chu Wushuang had never thought of letting anyone else go up. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Wushuang glanced at the young man behind him and smiled. "Brother Yang Heng, I wonder if you're interested in sparring with someone." When they heard Chu Wushuang's words, although it seemed like he was asking for Yang Heng's opinion, he was actually telling everyone that he was sending Yang Heng up. Who was Yang Heng? Everyone present was familiar with his identity. He was a core disciple from Tianfeng Shenzong, and he was an invincible existence among his peers. At this moment, Chu Wushuang had sent Yang Heng. His meaning was very clear. Whoever wanted to fight would send someone of the younger generation. This was obviously targeted at Chu Wuming. Now that Chu Wuming had the Burning Sky ruler behind him, Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang were no longer able to suppress Chu Wuming in the Dao Emperor realm. As such, Chu Wushuang could only find other ways to suppress Chu Wuming. After thinking about it, the only person who could suppress Chu Wuming was Yang Heng. As a core disciple of Tianfeng Shenzong, Chu Wushuang was well aware of Yang Heng's strength. Although Chu Wuming had many followers of the younger generation, they were simply ants when compared to Yang Heng. Moreover, he had sent Yang Heng, so Chu Wuming could only send someone of the younger generation. Among the younger generation, Chu Wuming's side was no match for Yang Heng. When he heard Chu Wushuang's words, Yang Heng stood up and smiled. "I naturally won't refuse your highness' order." "Haha, good. Everyone, who is willing to exchange pointers with brother Yang Heng?" Yang Heng agreed. Chu Wushuang laughed loudly. In the face of Chu Wushuang's shout, no one present spoke. Chu Wushuang had clearly expected this, so he wasn't angry. Instead, he turned to Chu Wuming with a smile and said, "Third brother, I heard that a young genius has appeared by your side recently. How about it? Do you want him to exchange pointers with brother Yang Fan?" As he spoke, Chu Wushuang glanced at Xiaochen from time to time. Obviously, the person he spoke of was naturally Xiaochen. He hadn't seen Xiaochen fight, but Chu Wushuang, who was well aware of Yang Heng's strength, clearly didn't think that Xiao Chen could go against Yang Heng. Today, Chu Wushuang wanted to send a message to everyone by allowing Yang Heng to defeat Xiao Chen in front of everyone. Didn't you, Chu Wuming, rope in a great figure at the Dao Emperor realm? You possess the strength to go against me at the Dao Emperor realm, but what about the other aspects? I, Chu Wushuang, can't crush you either. To put it bluntly, Chu Wushuang wanted to tell everyone that Chu Wuming still didn't have the qualifications to go against him even with the heaven's scorching ruler. Chu Wuming was still too weak. He also wanted to remind the various powers that were wavering to think carefully about whether they should submit to Chu Wuming. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Wushuang smiled at Chu Wuming and waited for his reply. At the same time, Chu Wuming, who was already in a difficult position, could only look helplessly at Xiao Chen. He'd already expected that Chu Wushuang and Chu Wuk wouldn't let him rise so easily. However, Chu Wuming hadn't expected that Chu Wushuang would actually go so far and force him into a dead end in front of so many people. Based on the current situation, no matter what Chu Wuming chose, he would definitely lose face today. If Xiao Chen didn't fight, it meant that he was afraid. On the other hand, if Xiao Chen chose to fight and lost in the end, it would mean that he wasn't a match for Chu Wuming. It would also cause Chu Wuming's status in the hearts of the various powers. In this way, it would be even more difficult to rope him in the future. Of course, if Xiao Chen could defeat Yang Heng, it would be a different story. However, Yang Heng was a core disciple of the Tianfeng Zone. Could Xiao Chen defeat him? Although he knew that Xiao Chen's battle prowess was extraordinary, Yang Heng wasn't an ordinary character. Chu Wuming wasn't confident in Xiao Chen's ability. Knowing what Chu Wuming was thinking, Xiao Chen, who hadn't said a word until now, slowly stood up. A faint smile appeared on his face as he said, "Since your Highness Second Prince wants to spar, I naturally can't refuse." Xiao Chen agreed to fight. Hearing this, Chu Wushuang laughed heartily. He coldly glanced at Xiao Chen and said indifferently, "Ha, good. Then let this prince see how strong the people under Third Brother are." Xiao Chen agreed to fight. Very quickly, everyone cleared out a space below the Heaven Ascension platform and reinforced it with glyphs to prevent the shockwaves from the battle from spreading to other people. The glyphs were used to construct a space for the battle. Then, Xiao Chen and Yang Fan both came to the center of the glyphs. Immediately, the glyphs were activated and an invisible light curtain separated Xiao Chen and Yang Fan. Looking at Xiao Chen in the middle of the glyphs, Chu Wuming's face was still ugly. Beside him, the seventh prince also whispered, "Third brother, do you think Xiao Chen can win?" "I don't know. Brother Xiao Chen's strength is indeed extraordinary. When he faced the Yang family's disciples, he killed them with one finger. However, Yang Heng is also not an ordinary person." Hearing the seventh prince's words, Chu Wuming replied in a deep voice. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, the seventh prince sighed helplessly and said, "I think Xiao Chen's chances of winning are less than 10%. Although Third Brother has seen him kill the Yang family's disciples, how can the Yang family's disciples be compared with Yang Heng? Each of the core disciples of Tianfeng Zone is a dragon among men. It is even said that the core disciples of Tianfeng Zone have been taught by semi-sages. Therefore, even the Heaven's Pride experts are no match for them." The seventh prince was not optimistic about Xiao Chen's chances at all. He said that he had a 10% chance of winning because he was worried about Chu Wuming's face. Otherwise, according to the seventh prince's real thoughts, Xiao Chen would lose without a doubt. Not only the seventh prince, but almost everyone present had the same thought. It was not that Xiao Chen was not good enough, but that Yang Heng was too strong. A core disciple of Glory's sect was definitely not a joke. Every core disciple of Tianfeng Zone was the future successor of Glory sect. Their talent was unimaginable. Chapter 382. No one was optimistic about Xiao Chen, even Chu Qingshan and the other two sitting on the platform. Looking at Burning Sky Ruler, Chu Qingshan smiled and said, "This Xiao Chen is Burning Sky Ruler's nephew, right? Not bad, but it's a pity that he has met Yang Heng. He has no chance of winning." Knowing that Xiaochen was Burning Sky Ruler's nephew, Burning Sky Ruler's face sunk when he heard Chu Qingshan's words. Is that so? However, I feel that Chen will definitely win. Yang Heng was Tianfeng Xingzong's core disciple. His strength was strong, but Burning Sky Ruler didn't believe Xiaochen would lose. So what if he was a core disciple of the sacred sect? In the Heavenly Chen continent, how could Yang Heng understand the training Xiaochen and the others had gone through? At such a young age, he had participated in a battle of over 10 million people. At the same time, he had fought Hao Tian and the other demon saints' direct disciples. Without any exaggeration, in terms of training, Xiaochen definitely left Yang Heng in the dust. Compared to Xiaochen, Yang Heng was a flower in a greenhouse. Thus, what reason did Xiaochen have to lose? Burning Sky Ruler was very dissatisfied with Chu Qingshan's words, but Chu Qingshan didn't mind. He smiled and said, "Since Burning Sky Ruler doesn't believe me, how about the three of us make a bet? Let's bet on whether Xiaochen can win or not." Okay. Facing Chu Qingshan's suggestion, Burning Sky Ruler didn't hesitate to agree. The three retired emperors immediately began a grand gamble. Their bets were naturally not cheap, especially Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai. Many of the bets they took out were treasures that the Burning Heaven Dominator had never seen before. However, they were extremely precious treasures that were of great help to cultivation. It had to be said that in terms of cultivation resources, the Heavenly River continent was indeed much richer than the Heavenly Chen continent. Compared to Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai, Burning Sky Ruler didn't have as many precious cultivation resources. However, Burning Sky Ruler had spirit stones. Spirit stones of similar value could also be used as bets. The three of them decided on their bets very soon. At the same time, Xiaochen and Yang Heng stood opposite each other in the formation below the platform. They stared at each other calmly. Unlike the others, Yang Heng did not belittle Xiaochen at all. Instead, he spoke calmly. "I was able to become a core disciple of Tianfeng Xingzong because my perception is naturally stronger than others, especially when it comes to danger. I can sense danger from you. Clearly, you are not as weak as everyone thinks." Every core disciple of Tianfeng Xingzong was undoubtedly a top figure. Hearing Yang Heng's words, Xiaochen gave a noncommittal smile. He didn't say anything, but the storage ring in his hand flashed, and the scarlet-edged sword appeared in his hand. It was only a spar, so there was no need to use the heavenly weapon, Ink Dragon Sword. Seeing Xiaochen take out the scarlet-edged sword, Yang Heng didn't say anything. He also took out his own earth weapon, a silver-white long spear. The long spear's rank was also at the peak of the earth rank. With the weapons in hand, Xiaochen and Yang Heng's fighting spirit soared to the heavens. To Xiaochen, Yang Heng was the strongest person he had met since coming to the Heavenly River continent. As a core disciple of Tianfeng Xingzong, Yang Heng had clearly reached the level of a king of prides. He couldn't be underestimated. Facing the upcoming battle, everyone around seemed to have seen the result. Facing Yang Heng, everyone thought that Xiaochen would lose, especially Chu Wushuang. The battle hadn't even begun, but the corners of his mouth had already revealed a smile. It was as if Yang Heng had already won. Compared to Chu Wushuang, Chu Wuming's face was a little nervous. On one hand, Chu Wuming hoped that Xiaochen could defeat Yang Heng, but on the other hand, Chu Wuming felt that his chances were slim. Xiaochen was strong, but Yang Heng was definitely not an ordinary person. It could be said that except for the Burning Sky Ruler and Zhang Qi, no one else was optimistic about Xiaochen's chances. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Xiaochen and Yang Heng moved at the same time. Their feet moved, and they rushed towards each other at the same time. When they were still 3 meters apart, Yang Heng directly stabbed out with his spear. For a moment, a series of sonic booms rang out. However, from these sonic booms, it wasn't difficult to see the power of Yang Heng's spear. So strong. If it were any other Sky Realm warrior, they probably wouldn't be able to block this spear. Facing Yang Heng's spear, many of the nobles present couldn't help but exclaim. Although Yang Heng was very famous, only a few people had actually seen him in action. Now that they had seen Yang Heng's strength with their own eyes, everyone present turned pale with fright. Compared to the shock of these people, the young man sitting behind the first prince, who was also a core disciple from Tianfeng Zone like Yang Heng, smiled faintly. Junior brother Yang Heng has the title of Little Spear God in our Tianfeng Zone. Regarding Yang Heng's strength, the young man was very calm. He was also from Tianfeng Zone, and they were fellow disciples. He naturally knew how strong Yang Heng was. Yang Heng's spear had completely stunned everyone. Some people even thought that Xiaochen wouldn't be able to block this spear and would be defeated in a single move. Some people already thought that Xiaochen was going to lose. However, such thoughts were obviously impossible. Facing Yang Heng's powerful spear, Xiaochen's face didn't have the slightest trace of panic. His body moved, and with an exquisite move, he dodged Yang Heng's spear. Then, he fiercely raised the sword in his hand and pierced it towards Yang Heng's heart. From dodging to thrusting the sword, the entire process could be said to be like moving clouds and flowing water. Seeing Xiaochen's series of movements, many people present were stunned. Previously, they thought that Xiaochen wouldn't be able to block this spear. However, in the blink of an eye, Xiaochen had perfectly neutralized Yang Heng's attack. At the same time, he had also switched from defense to offense. Beautiful. Someone unconsciously praised. Xiaochen's series of movements could indeed be called perfect. The seventh prince, who was also staring at Xiaochen, also had a look of disbelief on his face. As the saying goes, one can tell whether a person is an expert as soon as he makes a move. Previously, he thought that Xiaochen couldn't possibly be Yang Heng's opponent, but now, just based on this series of movements, it was not difficult for the seventh prince to see that Xiaochen's strength was simply boundless. If it were anyone else, it would be impossible for them to withstand Yang Heng's attack. Third brother, this. The seventh prince found that he had completely misjudged Xiaochen. He couldn't help but cry out. Hearing the seventh prince's cry, Chu Wuming was completely stunned. He had seen Xiaochen in action, but only once. At that time, Xiaochen only used a finger to kill a member of the Yang family, so Chu Wuming didn't understand Xiaochen's combat strength. But now, although it was only a brief encounter, Xiaochen's performance made Chu Wuming very clear that Xiaochen's strength was much, much stronger than he had imagined. Chapter 383. Xiaochen's strength was far beyond Chu Wuming's imagination. Previously, he only thought that Xiaochen was not weak, but now it seemed that Xiaochen was more than not weak. He could be said to be heaven-defying. In just a short move, Xiaochen and Yang Heng's performance had already shocked everyone present, especially Xiaochen. Everyone could not understand where such a peerless genius had come from. Facing Xiaochen's sword, Yang Heng's eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. He had already felt that Xiaochen was very strong, but Yang Heng was still confident that he could defeat Xiaochen. However, facing this sword, Yang Heng's confidence quickly began to crumble. Xiaochen's strength was beyond Yang Heng's expectations. This was a person who was not weaker than himself. It was hard to imagine that in this small moonless empire, there was a peer who was not weaker than himself. After all, Yang Heng was a core disciple of Tianfeng Zone. There was no time to think, because Xiaochen's sword had already gone straight for Yang Heng's heart. Without hesitation, Yang Heng quickly retreated. At the same time, relying on the advantage of the spear, Yang Heng swept the spear horizontally. The momentum was heavy, as if he wanted to directly cut Xiaochen in half. Facing Yang Heng's counterattack, Xiaochen did not retreat. Instead, he rushed directly towards Yang Heng. At the same time, a surge of sword intent erupted from Xiaochen's body. Sword intent, you. Feeling that a terrifying sword intent had erupted from Xiaochen's body, Yang Heng turned pale with fright. How was this possible? Xiaochen had actually comprehended the power of sword intent. Although Yang Heng had also comprehended spear intent, he was a core disciple of Tianfeng Zone. It was natural for him to comprehend spear intent. But what about Xiaochen? Who was he? How could he have comprehended sword intent? Even in Tianfeng Zone, those who could comprehend the power of concept before the age of 30 were basically core disciples. Ordinary disciples simply couldn't do it. Feeling the sword intent that exploded from Xiao Chen's body, not only Yang Heng, but everyone present was stunned. Even Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai on the Heaven Ascension platform narrowed their eyes and said, "Sword intent, this child has comprehended sword intent." Previously, they thought that Xiao Chen was definitely not a match for Yang Heng. However, as soon as the battle began, Xiao Chen proved with his strength that he was not as weak as everyone thought. Facing Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai's shock, the nearby Burning Sky Sovereign smiled. Xiao Chen had never disappointed these old fellows before. Suddenly, he recalled Xiao Chen's entire life experience. He knew that Xiao Chen was born in a small city in the Eastern Sun region. From there, Xiao Chen could be said to have created countless miracles. In the end, he became the publicly recognized #1 proud king of the entire heavenly Qin continent. Even Huangfu Ao and Guduya, these incomparably arrogant proud kings, were incomparably convinced by Xiao Chen. Watching Xiao Chen fiercely fight with Yang Heng, the Burning Sky Sovereign's eyes gradually became moist. Xiao Chen. That's right, this youth who walked out of Mtling County City. Although he was only in his early 20s, he had unknowingly become the symbol of the heavenly Qin continent. That's right, he was the symbol of the heavenly Qin continent. Now, if you casually asked any heavenly Qin continent martial artist who represented the heavenly Qin continent, they would probably say Xiao Chen and not the various rulers. This was because Xiao Chen's experience growing up could be said to be the faith of the heavenly Qin continent. He bravely moved forward and looked down on everything. Although he was still young and only had the cultivation of the heaven realm, Xiao Chen had unknowingly become the idol of all heavenly Qin continent martial artists. This was something that even the various rulers could not compare to. The smile on his face became even more brilliant. At this moment, the Burning Sky Sovereign suddenly realized that he liked the way Xiao Chen fought. This was because when he watched Xiao Chen fight, it was as if he could see the scene of the entire heavenly Qin continent facing difficulties head-on. Facing a strong enemy, Xiao Chen would never retreat. This was what the heavenly Qin continent needed. The Burning Sky Sovereign looked at Xiao Chen with gratification. At the same time, facing Xiao Chen who had already displayed his sword intent, Yang Heng did not dare to be careless. He immediately displayed his own spear intent. Xiao Chen was not surprised that Yang Heng had comprehended spear intent. After all, as a core disciple of the Tianfeng Zone, it would be strange if Yang Heng had not comprehended the power of concept. One had to know that even the Burning Sky Sovereign, Huangfu Ao, had already comprehended spear intent when he was in the heavenly Qin continent. The two of them fought fiercely, using all kinds of martial skills. For a moment, the battle became even more intense. Yang Heng pointed his finger and displayed the pure Jun sword finger. Facing Xiao Chen's finger, Yang Heng chose to take it head-on. However, just as Yang Heng successfully blocked the pure Jun sword finger, Xiao Chen took the opportunity and displayed the Dragon Spring sword finger. A dragon roared. Facing the Dragon Spring sword finger's attack, Yang Heng's expression changed slightly. However, this was not the end. Just as the Dragon Spring sword finger was about to reach Yang Heng, Xiao Chen pointed his finger again and displayed the Tai sword finger. Facing Yang Heng, Xiao Chen's idea was very simple. He wanted to directly crush Yang Heng. Therefore, he did not have the slightest intention of taking advantage of the situation. The pure Jun sword finger, the Dragon Spring sword finger, and the Tai sword finger. The three attacks were each stronger than the last. At this moment, Yang Heng's expression finally changed completely. I can't block it. Facing Xiao Chen's series of attacks, this was Yang Heng's first thought. In fact, among the core disciples of the Tianfeng Zone, Yang Heng's strength was not his combat strength, but his perception. He was born with a perception that surpassed ordinary people, and this was the main reason why Yang Heng could become a core disciple. Therefore, compared to the other core disciples, Yang Heng's combat strength was not considered strong. At this moment, facing Xiao Chen's series of attacks, Yang Heng was already showing signs of defeat. With his extraordinary perception, Yang Heng did not even need to personally experience Xiao Chen's attacks to know that he could not block them. If he had to take Xiao Chen's Dragon Spring Sword Finger and Tai Yi Sword Finger head-on, he would definitely be seriously injured. Stop, 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 I admit defeat. Yang Heng had no intention of fighting head-on. He directly opened his mouth and admitted defeat. Hearing Yang Heng's words, Xiao Chen was also stunned. Yang Heng admitted defeat so easily? Then, Xiao Chen stopped his movements and took the initiative to shift the Dragon Spring Sword Finger and Tai Yi Sword Finger's attacks, allowing them to brush past Yang Heng's body. Xiao Chen could not believe that a core disciple of the Glory Sect would admit defeat so easily without even putting up a fight. Xiao Chen felt helpless about this. The young man sitting behind Chuok, who was Yang Heng's senior brother, had a bitter smile on his face. Here it comes again. Junior brother Yang Heng has always been like this. He never had any desire to win. Among the core disciples of the Tianfengxing Zone, Yang Heng was definitely an anomaly. Moreover, Yang Heng never cared about the outcome of a battle. As soon as he was defeated, Yang Heng would immediately choose to admit defeat without any psychological pressure. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 384. Yang Heng directly chose to surrender. Moreover, from the looks of it, he didn't seem to be unwilling at all. His expression was still the same as before, and he even gave off a feeling of relief. However, the most puzzling thing was that after Yang Heng surrendered, he actually took the initiative to approach Xiao Chen. With a smile on his face, he cupped his fists towards Xiao Chen and said, "Brother Xiao Chen's strength is really unexpected. I wholeheartedly accept my loss." He wasn't angry because of his defeat, nor was he embarrassed in the slightest. Hearing Yang Heng's words, Xiao Chen helplessly smiled bitterly. This guy was really, how should he put it? He stood aloof from worldly affairs. He didn't seem to have any desire for victory or defeat. Whether he won or lost, it didn't matter to Yang Heng. Facing such a Yang Heng, Xiao Chen couldn't help but think of the distant Flame King, Feng Lingye. He was also such a person. Although Feng Lingye had been defeated by him before, it wasn't difficult to see that Feng Lingye didn't care about such a defeat at all. He was very similar to Yang Heng. However, Feng Lingye was more carefree than Yang Heng. All along, Xiao Chen and the other proud kings had said that Feng Lingye was a heartless person. The only thing that could make Feng Lingye care about was his wife, Su Jin. Apart from Su Jin, Feng Lingye didn't care about anything else. It was precisely because of Feng Lingye's personality that he became the weakest among the proud kings. Looking into the distance, Xiao Chen's gaze became somewhat blurred for a moment. He softly muttered in his heart, "We agreed to meet in the Heavenly River continent. Are you guys still doing well? Don't die." Because of Yang Heng, Xiao Chen suddenly thought of Feng Lingye and the others. After experiencing so many things together, Xiao Chen and the others had gone from competing with each other at the beginning to becoming life and death brothers who could trust each other with their backs. While Xiao Chen was thinking of everyone, in various parts of the Heavenly River continent, the proud kings were also doing their own things. In an unknown small city, a handsome youth wearing coarse hemp clothes was carrying 2 sacks of lime on his shoulders like an ordinary person. He was constantly moving them into a carriage. This youth was handsome, but his figure was somewhat frail. If someone from the Heavenly Stellar continent saw him, they would definitely recognize him as the distant Flame King, Feng Lingye. Just like an ordinary person, he was doing manual labor in this small city. After he finished moving, he received a copper coin from a plump manager. Following the street, they arrived at a run-down bungalow. Feng Lingye pushed open the door and entered, happily calling out, "Wife, we can buy a fish to eat today." Su Jin looked. "She." Feng Lingye laughed. "You don't understand. I'm searching for my own Tao." Ha! Feng Lingye and Su Jin had been living in this small city ever since they came to the Heavenly River continent. Feng Lingye had always pretended to be an ordinary person without any cultivation. According to Feng Lingye, he was searching for his own Tao and preparing to break through to the Tao querying realm. Su Jin didn't know what to say. She stretched out her hand and said, "If you want to eat fish, give me the money. I'll go buy it." Good. I just earned a copper coin today. Here. Thank you for your hard work. Immersed in the moral world, searching for his own Tao in the moral world, this was Feng Lingye's experience. On the other side, Snow Fairy Ouyang was in a snowy mountain. This snowy mountain was filled with exquisite pavilions. It was clear that this was the location of some sect. Ouyang was practicing her sword technique. At this moment, a 12 or 13-year-old girl ran over and said to Ouyang coquettishly, senior sister, tell me a story. I want to hear a story." "Little you, what story do you want to hear?" Ouyang revealed a rare smile. "I want to hear the story of King Bewitching Sword." "Tell me again." "Start from the beginning." The little girl said expectantly. "You want to hear about King Bewitching Sword? Why don't I change it for you? How about King Bewitching Spear, Huang Fuao?" No. I want to listen to King Bewitching Sword. I want to listen to him." Okay. Ouyang couldn't resist the little girl's coquettishness. As Ouyang opened her mouth, the little girl's face revealed a look of infatuation. Ouyang came to the Tiana continent. When she woke up, she was in the Snow Celestial Holy Sect. Because of her talent, Ouyang was chosen by a half-step sage elder of the Snow Celestial Holy Sect. The little girl in front of her was her master's granddaughter. She especially liked to hear about the 10 great kings of Bewitching Sword, especially about Xiao Chen. Now, the little girl had already regarded Xiao Chen as her only idol. In fact, in the little girl's opinion, the 10 great kings of Bewitching Sword were stories made up by Ouyang However, only Ouyang knew that this wasn't true. All the stories she told were personally experienced by everyone. While telling the story to the little girl, Ouyang also gradually sank into her memories. She thought to herself, "Everyone, how are you?" On the snowy mountain, Ouyang was immersed in her memories. In another big city, Muhi was sitting alone in a beautiful garden. He was drinking wine while looking at the sky. Just as Muhi was in a daze, a beautiful girl slowly walked over. She smiled at Muhi and said, "Husband, what are you thinking about?" The girl called Muhi husband. That's right, this girl was indeed Muhi's wife. It was just that they met after coming to the Tiana continent. After being transferred to the Tiana continent, Muhi was saved by this girl. The girl was also a young miss of a big family. After a long time of getting along, the two secretly developed feelings for each other. Later, they became husband and wife. Muhi smiled at the girl and said softly, "Nothing, I'm thinking about the Dark Spear Holy Sect's disciple recruitment tomorrow. With husband's strength, there should be no problem." Hearing Muhi's words, the girl smiled and said. In fact, Muhi wasn't telling the truth. Just as she said, Muhi wasn't worried about the Dark Spear Holy Sect's disciple recruitment. Just now, Muhi didn't know why, but he suddenly thought of Xiao Chen and the others. It had been so long since he came to the Tiana continent. He didn't know if these guys were doing well. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 385. Feng Lingye, Ouyang and Muhi all had their own fortuitous encounters. At the same time, the other king of geniuses, such as Long Qing, Chen Ling, Gudu Wuya, and Huang Fuao, were the same. Fortunately, everyone was still alive and had adapted to life on the Tiana continent. At this moment, everyone was using their own methods to improve. In the Moonless Empire's imperial capital, Xiao Chen fell into a daze because he suddenly thought of Feng Lingye and the others. It wasn't until Yang Heng called out to him a few times that Xiao Chen came back to his senses. Xiao Chen cupped his hands to Yang Heng and said apologetically, "I just thought of an old friend. Sorry for my rudeness." "It's fine," Yang Heng said indifferently when he heard Xiao Chen's words. The battle was over, so the array was naturally lifted. Yang Heng minded his own business and returned to his seat. Although Chu Wushuang was furious that Yang Heng had lost and surrendered, he didn't dare to vent his anger on Yang Heng. There was no other way. Yang Heng was a core disciple of Tian Fengxing's own. Chu Wushuang didn't dare to offend him. He didn't explain anything to Chu Wushuang. Perhaps in Yang Heng's opinion, a loss was a loss. In any case, his strength was indeed inferior to Xiao Chen's. Even if he had fought to the death, he would have been the one to lose. Moreover, Yang Heng didn't care too much about winning or losing. Yang Heng still had an indifferent expression on his face. He didn't look like he had lost at all. Chu Wushuang was about to explode in anger, but he had nowhere to vent it. Compared to Chu Wushuang's anger, Chu Wuming was extremely excited. When he saw Xiao Chen walk over, Chu Wuming took the initiative to stand up and greet him. He happily patted Xiao Chen's shoulder. "Brother Xiao Chen, you're really something. It's really a gift from the heavens for me to receive your help." Facing the incomparably excited Chu Wuming, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Your Highness, you're exaggerating." The battle had come to an end, but no one had expected this result. They had thought that Yang Heng would win, but the final winner was Xiao Chen. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but look at Xiao Chen. Before this, who would have thought that not only had Chu Wuming obtained the support of a Tao Emperor, he had even obtained the assistance of a peerless genius who was comparable to a core disciple of the hallowed sect. In this way, Chu Wuming wasn't the slightest bit inferior to the first Prince Chu Wushuang and second Prince Chu Wushuang. Many clans were considering which side they should take. Based on the current situation, the third Prince Chu Wuming was no longer the powerless loser who was about to be eliminated. At this moment, Chu Wuming truly possessed the qualifications to compete for the position of Crown Prince. If they could side with Chu Wuming now, it would be like sending charcoal in snowy weather. In this way, if Chu Wuming obtained the position of Crown Prince in the end, the first batch of clans that sided with Chu Wuming would obviously be able to obtain even more benefits. Many clans had already begun to ponder about this matter. However, there were a few clans that had complicated expressions when facing Xiao Chen. Needless to say, these clans were naturally the Jiang, Shen, Han, and Yang clans. As the four great clans that were second only to the 8 great dukes, they had some conflicts with Xiao Chen. The origin of this conflict also originated from the Illusionary Moon Conference. The patriarchs of the 4 great clans already knew what happened at the Illusionary Moon Conference. At this moment, the patriarch of the Jiang clan softly said to the person beside him, "We have to think of a way to build a good relationship with Xiao Chen. This person is not someone we can offend." They wanted to repair their relationship with Xiao Chen and bury the hatchet. Of course, there wasn't much of a problem between the two parties. In the patriarch of the Jiang clan's opinion, as long as the Jiang clan could compensate Xiao Chen and sincerely apologize, there shouldn't be much of a problem. Like the Jiang clan, the other 3 clans also had the same thought. Since they already knew Xiao Chen's identity, the 4 great clans obviously wouldn't make Xiao Chen an enemy. Not to mention Xiao Chen's own strength, just the third prince's high regard for Xiao Chen was not someone the 4 great clans could offend. Furthermore, Xiao Chen's uncle had now become the empire's 3rd retired emperor. As such, the 4 great clans didn't have the slightest bit of temper. Compared to the other 3 clans, the Yang clan was clearly the most troublesome. After all, only the Yang clan had truly fought with Xiao Chen that day. Although the Yang clan's disciple was instantly killed by Xiao Chen, who knew if Xiao Chen would still remember this matter? If the Yang clan wanted to repair their relationship with Xiao Chen, it would obviously be much more difficult than the other 3 clans. The patriarch of the Yang clan was also very clear about this. He had already secretly decided that after the bliss ceremony ended, he would personally head to the heavenly stellar residence tomorrow to apologize to Xiao Chen. The patriarch's personal visit clearly showed his absolute sincerity. This was also the Yang clan's only method at the moment. Not knowing the thoughts of these powerful clans, the victorious Xiao Chen didn't change much. He continued to sit calmly behind Chu Wuming. As Xiao Chen and Yang Heng's battle ended, Chumu quickly announced the end of the bliss ceremony and left first. However, before he left, Chumu glanced indifferently at Xiao Chen. Perhaps Xiao Chen's performance today had indeed caused Chumu to have a whole new level of respect for him. Chumu left. As for Chu Qingshan and the other two, they had already left after the outcome of the battle was decided. Today, Chu Qingshan and Chumu Bai had both lost quite a few good things to the Burning Heaven Dominator. The two of them clearly didn't have the mood to stay any longer. After the three retired emperors and Chumu left, the people of the various large clans relaxed a lot. Many of them took the initiative to propose a toast to Chu Wuming. Although they didn't directly say that they supported Chu Wuming, this was already an expression of goodwill. Faced with so many families taking the initiative to express goodwill, Chu Wuming was naturally incomparably happy. Compared to Chu Wuming's side, Chu Wushuang's face was gloomy. Although there were families that came to propose a toast to him, Chu Wushuang wasn't interested at all. Therefore, he didn't stay for long. Very quickly, Chu Wushuang brought his people and left. However, as he left, Chu Wushuang coldly glanced at Chu Wuming and Xiao Chen. From the expression in his eyes, it wasn't hard to see that a thick killing intent had already emerged in his heart. The entire heavenly bestowal ceremony proceeded very smoothly. As for who was the biggest winner today, it was naturally Chu Wuming. In front of all the nobles and powerful clans, Chu Wuming had fiercely shown his face today. As such, Chu Wuming had truly obtained the recognition of the various large clans. At the same time, he could be considered to have the qualifications to continue competing for the position of Crown Prince. After personally sending Xiao Chen back to the Heavenly Stellar Residence, Chu Wuming saw that it was already late and didn't leave. Xiao Chen also had people arrange a room for Chu Wuming. After settling down Chu Wuming, Xiao Chen slowly walked back to his residence. After a day, Xiao Chen was also quite tired. To be honest, Xiao Chen didn't like such a large-scale celebration. The feeling was worse than having Xiao Chen fight. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 386. After returning to his room, Xiao Chen sat cross-legged on a cushion with his eyes slightly closed, and he began his daily cultivation. After a night of silence, when Xiao Chen woke up from his cultivation early in the morning, Gu Xiu reported to Xiao Chen that the third prince, Chu Wuming, had arrived. During this period of time, Gu Xiu had practically become Xiao Chen's personal attendant. Gu Xiu didn't reject the fact that a Dao King realm cultivator had become his attendant at all. Conversely, he was very happy. Perhaps in his opinion, he would be able to obtain more fortuitous encounters by following by Xiao Chen's side. After all, Xiao Chen was a miracle in the eyes of the cultivators of the heavenly Chen continent. When he heard that Chu Wuming had arrived, he slept in the heavenly stellar residence last night and asked Gu Xiu to bring him to the garden. Xiao Chen washed up before walking towards the garden unhurriedly. The heavenly stellar residence in the imperial capital had been arranged by Chu Wuming. It was extremely large and beautifully decorated. Not only did it have a garden, there were also bamboo courtyards, artificial mountains, artificial lakes, and various other sights. It could be said to be extremely luxurious. When Xiao Chen arrived at the garden, Chu Wuming, who had arrived first and was seated in the pavilion, immediately stood up and knelt down towards Xiao Chen, who walked over. When he saw Chu Wuming actually bow so respectfully to him, Xiao Chen quickly walked over and personally helped Chu Wuming up. He feigned surprise and bewilderment as he said, "Your Highness, why are you doing this?" "Brother Xiao Chen, it's the fortune of my lifetime to be able to obtain Brother Xiao Chen's assistance," Chu Wuming replied when he heard Xiao Chen's words. After yesterday's incident, Chu Wuming completely understood that Xiao Chen wasn't as simple as he thought. In terms of strength, Xiao Chen was superior to Yang Heng, so Chu Wuming was simply the fortune of 3 lifetimes to be able to obtain Xiao Chen's assistance. It was precisely because he realized this that Chu Wuming's attitude towards Xiao Chen underwent a 180-degree change. It was just like how Chu Wuk and Chu Wushuang treated Yang Heng and the others with an extremely respectful attitude. This was obvious from how Chu Wushuang didn't dare to criticize Yang Heng even though he was filled with rage yesterday. He completely raised Xiao Chen to the same level as Yang Heng and Chu Wok. When he heard Chu Wuming's words, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Your Highness, there's no need to be like this. Xiao Chen said that he would help your Highness, so he definitely won't go back on his word. Furthermore, didn't your Highness help Xiao Chen a lot? Look at everything in front of you, isn't it all thanks to your Highness?" As he spoke, Xiao Chen dragged Chu Wuming into the pavilion. The two of them sat opposite each other. When he heard Xiao Chen's words, Chu Wuming's face was filled with gratitude. At the same time, Chu Wuming felt incomparably fortunate to be able to meet someone like Xiao Chen. If he hadn't met Xiao Chen, Chu Wuming would probably have already withdrawn from the battle for the position of Crown Prince. Furthermore, it was hard to say whether he would still be alive. Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang could let the other princes off, but they definitely wouldn't let him off. Similarly, if Chu Wuming were to gain power, it would be the same. As for his other brothers, Chu Wuming could let them be free and unfettered princes, because these brothers would not pose the slightest threat to him. However, it was different for Chu Wok and Chu Wushuang. Even if they were blood-related brothers, Chu Wuming would definitely not let the two of them live in this world. Xiao Chen gave Chu Wuming hope. It could even be said that he saved Chu Wuming's life. The two of them chatted in the garden. Of course, it was more about Chu Wuming thanking Xiao Chen. While the two of them were talking, Gu Xiu came to Xiao Chen's side and said softly, "Young master, the head of the Yang family is here to apologize." Hearing Gu Xiu's words, Xiao Chen smiled. Xiao Chen naturally knew why the head of the Yang family was here to apologize. It was obviously because of the Illusionary Moon Conference. Looking at Chu Wuming, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "I'm afraid your Highness will have a great help today." After saying that, Xiao Chen turned to Gu Xiu and said, "Bring him in." The arrival of the head of the Yang family was not surprising to Xiao Chen, and there was nothing to be happy about. However, to Chu Wuming, it was of great significance because today, Xiao Chen had absolute confidence that he could make the Yang family rely on Chu Wuming. This way, Chu Wuming's power would expand further, and he would be closer to his two older brothers. Not long after, Gu Xiu brought the head of the Yang family in. He had seen the head of the Yang family yesterday, but he did not pay much attention to him. The head of the Yang family was tall and strong, with a square face, thick eyebrows, and big eyes. Just by looking at his appearance, he gave off a forthright feeling. In fact, that was indeed the case. The head of the Yang family was indeed forthright and did not have any schemes. In the Jiang, Shen, Han, and Yang families, the head of the Yang family could be said to be a martial artist through and through. He quickly walked in front of Xiao Chen and Chu Wuming. He did not expect Chu Wuming to be here as well. The head of the Yang family was stunned at first, but he quickly bowed to the two of them and said, "Minister Right General Yang Jian greets His Highness the Third Prince and young Master Xiao." Looking at Yang Jian, Xiao Chen spoke first, "General Yang is too courteous. May I know why the general is here today?" Without beating around the bush, Xiao Chen went straight to the point. Hearing this, Yang Jian was a straightforward person and immediately told the truth about the purpose of his visit. It was mainly to apologize to Xiao Chen. Hearing Yang Jian's words, Xiao Chen fell into silence. At this moment, Chu Wuming spoke, "General Yang, I am the host of the Illusionary Moon Conference this time. To be honest, the Yang family has indeed gone a bit overboard. They actually wanted to harm Brother Xiao." Xiao Chen was silent. In addition to Chu Wuming's words, Yang Jian became anxious and immediately knelt in front of Xiao Chen, hoping to obtain Xiao Chen's forgiveness. As a general, Yang Jian naturally did not have many tricks up his sleeve. He knew that he could not offend Xiao Chen, so he could only try his best to obtain Xiao Chen's forgiveness. After taking out enough sincerity, Xiao Chen did not have any resentment towards Yang Jian. Looking at Yang Jian kneeling on the ground, Xiao Chen personally helped him up and spoke with a smile. "General Yang, what are you doing? This is too serious, too serious. If you want to resolve this matter, it is simple. If General Yang is willing to work for your highness, then what is the grudge between us? Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Yang Jian quickly reacted. Evidently, Xiao Chen wanted to help Chu Wuming win over the Yang family. Looking at Xiao Chen, then at Chu Wuming, Yang Jian hesitated for a moment before clasping his hands and bowing to Chu Wuming. He said in a serious tone, "The Yang family is willing to work for your highness." Hearing Yang Jian's words, Chu Wuming was overjoyed. Obtaining the support of the Yang family was indeed a huge help to Chu Wuming. Immediately, Chu Wuming personally invited Yang Jian to sit and spoke with a smile. "General Yang is a pillar of the empire. Now that I can obtain your help, my great cause will be successful. Ha! Please add, please vote, please recommend." Chapter 387. After successfully winning over the Yang family, Chu Wuming was extremely happy. He held a banquet in his palace and invited everyone around him. Xiao Chen wasn't willing to participate in such a banquet, but since Chu Wuming personally invited him, Xiao Chen finally agreed. That night, everyone gathered in Chu Wuming's palace. After defeating Yang Heng last time, Xiao Chen successfully entered everyone's field of vision. He directly sat side by side with Chu Wuming. From this, it could be seen that Chu Wuming relied heavily on Xiao Chen. The banquet lasted until late at night. Under Gu Xiu's protection, Xiao Chen returned to the dustless residence. In the next 2 days, the Jiang, Shen, and Han families also sent people to deliver a lot of treasures. They all hoped to resolve their previous grievances with Xiao Chen. With these 3 families taking the initiative to express goodwill, Xiao Chen naturally didn't refuse them and accepted all the cultivation resources. However, compared to the Yang family, Xiao Chen didn't try to win over the Jiang, Shen, and Han families. Unlike the Yang family, it was almost impossible for these 3 families to rely on Chu Wuming because they were the people of the first and second princes. Although he wasn't able to win over the Jiang, Shen, and Han families, Xiao Chen still received a lot of good things from the 3 families. He kept the things that were useful for his own cultivation, and the rest, Xiao Chen also distributed to everyone. It could be said that since entering the imperial capital, everyone in the heavenly Qin continent had never lacked cultivation resources. Many of the cultivation resources were better than when they were in the heavenly Qin continent. After all, the heavenly river continent was richer than the heavenly Qin continent. Not to mention, whether it was because of the burning sky ruler or Xiao Chen, many people came to give gifts. As cultivators, what gifts should they give? Naturally, it was cultivation resources. With the support of sufficient cultivation resources, everyone's cultivation improved rapidly. It wouldn't be long before everyone would be able to make a leap as a whole. After all, many of them were already on the verge of a breakthrough. Ignoring the outside world, Xiao Chen calmly cultivated in the heavenly Qin residence. 2 days passed in a row. On the 3rd day, Chu Wuming personally came to visit. Hearing from Gu Xiu that Chu Wuming was here, Xiao Chen personally went out to welcome him. He knew why Chu Wuming was here. Calculating the time, the Royal Academy's Path of Tao should be opening. Chu Wuming's visit at this time was obviously because of the path's path. Currently, breaking through to the Tao querying realm was Xiao Chen's most urgent and important matter. He personally brought Chu Wuming to the small courtyard where he lived. The 2 of them sat on a stone bench in the courtyard. Looking at Xiao Chen, Chu Wuming said, "Brother Xiao Chen, the Path of Tao has been confirmed to open the day after tomorrow." Without beating around the bush, Chu Wuming directly said, "It would open the day after tomorrow." Xiao Chen was looking forward to the Path of Tao. After all, a secret realm that could help people break through to the Tao querying realm didn't seem to exist in the heavenly Qin continent. He had already arranged everything for Xiao Chen. At the same time, Chu Wuming also gave Xiao Chen the identity of an inner court disciple of the Royal Academy. After learning that Chu Wuming had given him the identity of an inner court disciple, Xiao Chen didn't care too much about it. Seeing Xiao Chen's contempt, Chu Wuming also explained. According to Chu Wuming, the identity of an inner court disciple of the Royal Academy was not simple. Not to mention other things, the current princes were all inner court disciples of the Royal Academy. At the same time, Yang Heng and his senior brother were also inner court disciples. Yang Heng and the others are core disciples of Tianfeng Xingzong. Can they also enter the Royal Academy? Hearing that Yang Heng and his senior brother were also inner court disciples of the Royal Academy, Xiao Chen asked curiously. Weren't the two of them core disciples of Tianfeng Xingzong? Facing Xiao Chen's question, Chu Wuming patiently explained, Brother Xiao Chen, you may not know this, but the Royal Academy is different from a sect. Compared to a sect, the Academy has more freedom. Joining the Academy is only for learning and cultivation. Moreover, there is a limit to the number of years you can join. It's not like a sect, where once you join, it's for a lifetime. After explaining the difference between an academy and a sect to Xiao Chen, Chu Wuming explained many benefits of being an inner court disciple of the Royal Academy. Since Yang Heng and his senior brother could join, there were obviously many benefits in the Royal Academy. Needless to say, the path of Tao was one of them. There were also many other cultivation resources in the Royal Academy. Moreover, other than the path of Tao, the Royal Academy also had other secret realms that were helpful for cultivation. It was precisely because there were so many benefits that Yang Heng and his senior brother became students of the Academy. It was not an exaggeration to say that more than half of the cultivation resources in the entire Moonless Empire had been invested by the royal family into the Royal Academy. Therefore, cultivating in the Royal Academy was absolutely beneficial. Moreover, the Academy did not require one to be loyal to it for life. Therefore, there was no need to worry too much about joining the Academy. After chatting with Chu Wuming for a long time, Xiao Chen had a general understanding of the Royal Academy. The entire Royal Academy was divided into the outer court and the inner court. Generally, students who entered the Royal Academy would start from the outer court. The outer court only accepted students under the age of 25, and their cultivation must have reached the Earth realm. After entering the outer court, they had 5 years to study. If they could successfully break through to the heaven realm within 5 years, they could enter the inner court. If they could not break through, they could only complete their studies and choose to leave the Royal Academy. After entering the inner court, they had a maximum of 50 years to study. However, unlike the outer court, everyone could only stay in the inner court for 50 years. After 50 years, no matter what realm they broke through, they would have to leave the academy. Of course, unless they became a teacher of the academy, then they could stay in the academy forever. The royal family established the Royal Academy to firmly control the power in their hands. As the Royal Academy only accepted geniuses, most of the people who graduated would enter the imperial court. These people were nurtured by the royal family, so they were naturally incomparably loyal to the royal family. It could be said that the current influential officials in the imperial court, including the 4 great princes and the 8 great dukes, had all graduated from the Royal Academy. After explaining the general situation of the Royal Academy to Xiao Chen, Chu Wuming continued. However, this time, Chu Wuming's tone and expression were extremely serious. To be honest with you, Brother Xiao Chen, the most intense competition between Chu Wok, Chu Wushuang, and I is within the Royal Academy. Unlike the outer court, the inner court is divided into 3 courts. Now, each of us is in control of one of the courts. Therefore, I would like to ask Brother Xiao Chen to speak to Senior Fentian. I hope that Senior Fentian can become the director of the Royal Academy. The reason why he arranged for Xiao Chen to enter the academy was not only because cultivating in the academy was extremely beneficial to Xiao Chen, but also because Chu Wuming had a request for him. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 388. The inner court was divided into 3 courtyards, heaven, earth, and mortal. This was a tradition that had been maintained since the Royal Academy was founded. The reason why the inner court was divided into 3 courtyards was to encourage inner court disciples to cultivate diligently. The distribution of resources in the inner court wasn't fair. Instead, it was distributed according to the strength of the 3 courtyards. Every half a year, the three courtyards would hold a competition, and the distribution of resources would be decided through this competition. The first courtyard would receive 50% of the resources, the second courtyard would receive 30%, and the last courtyard would only receive 20%. Because of this system, the competition in the inner court was extremely intense. This was also the original intention of the royal family when they founded the Royal Academy. However, with the competition for the position of Crown Prince in recent years, Chu Wuming and the other two each controlled the three courtyards. As a result, the competition between the three courtyards wasn't just limited to the distribution of resources. More importantly, there was also the competition for the position of Crown Prince. The competition became more and more intense. At the same time, there was a tradition in the Moonless Empire. Every retired emperor would basically become a principal of the Royal Academy in name. This was also a method to attract students. Previously, Chu Qingshan and Chu Mubai had always been the principals of the Royal Academy. At that time, Chu Wuming didn't have a Tao Emperor Realm Almighty behind him. As a result, the human courtyard he controlled quickly declined. Therefore, after the Burning Sky Ruler became the third retired emperor, Chu Wuming also urgently hoped that the Burning Sky Ruler could become the third principal of the Royal Academy. Chu Wuming didn't hide anything and told Xiaochen the truth. He knew very well that if he wanted to obtain Xiaochen's help, he absolutely couldn't deceive Xiaochen. This would only make Xiaochen feel disgusted and even cause the two of them to break off. Therefore, Chu Wuming would tell the truth about anything that required Xiaochen's help. This was also where Chu Wuming was smart. After hearing Chu Wuming's explanation, Xiaochen nodded slightly and said, "I'll talk to Uncle Tian about it. Anyway, he's just an honorary dean. There's nothing important." Uncle Tian should agree. It shouldn't be difficult for the Burning Heaven ruler to head to the Royal Academy and assume the title of dean. After all, it wouldn't take much time. It was just a title. Moreover, after becoming the dean of the Royal Academy, the Burning Heaven ruler would be able to obtain some cultivation resources from the academy. Why not? Seeing that Xiaochen had agreed, Chu Wuming was overjoyed. He smiled and said, "Then it's settled. Tomorrow, I will bring Brother Xiao to the academy. Now that Chu Wuk and Chu Wuming have both gone to the academy, we should return earlier. The day after tomorrow would be the day when the path of Tao would open. Tomorrow, Chu Wuming would bring Xiaochen to the Royal Academy." After hearing this, Xiaochen didn't refuse. After settling the matter, the two of them chatted for a while before Chu Wuming stood up and left. After sending off Chu Wuming, Xiaochen went to the Burning Heaven ruler's residence and told him about his appointment as the Royal Academy's dean. After hearing Xiaochen's words, the Burning Heaven ruler didn't refuse and readily agreed. With the Burning Heaven ruler's agreement, the following matters were naturally handed over to Chu Wuming to handle. Moreover, this matter shouldn't be too difficult. After all, having a Tao Emperor as the dean was definitely a good thing for the Royal Academy. No one would stop it. Early the next morning, Chu Wuming arrived at the Heavenly Stellar residence early as expected and headed straight to the Royal Academy with Xiaochen. On the way, Xiaochen told Chu Wuming that the Burning Heaven ruler had agreed to become the dean. Hearing this, Chu Wuming was filled with joy. They walked all the way to the Imperial Capital's teleportation formation. The Royal Academy wasn't built in the Imperial Capital but in a place outside the city called Moonless Mountain. Moonless Mountain wasn't far from the Imperial Capital and could be reached in the blink of an eye through the teleportation formation. Moreover, there was more than one teleportation formation in the Imperial Capital. One of them was specially provided for the use of the Royal Academy students. Although they had to pay a certain fee every time they used it, as long as you were a student of the Royal Academy, the fee was very, very low. Building a teleportation formation especially for the students of the Royal Academy showed how high the status of the students of the Royal Academy was in the Moonless Empire. After all, those who were able to enter the Royal Academy were basically geniuses of the Moonless Empire. At the same time, they were the pillars of the Empire's future. After passing through the teleportation formation, Xiaochen and Chu Wuming quickly arrived at the Royal Academy. The entire academy was built at the edge of an enormous lake. The entire edge of the lake was densely packed with buildings, and this was merely the outer court. As for the inner court, one could see that in the center of the lake, there were 4 small islands. The outer 3 islands were arranged in a triangle. These 3 islands were where the inner court was located, and each island was a branch of the academy. As for the island in the center, it was called Moonless Island, and it was where the various cultivation secret realms of the Royal Academy were located. At the shore, they boarded the boats. These boats were specially used to receive the inner court students. They were driven by spirit stones and were engraved with glyph arrays. From the shore of the outer court to the inner court, it only took 100 breaths of time. It was extremely convenient. Very quickly, they boarded the Human Academy Island. This was where the Human Academy under Chu Wuming's control was located. As for the other 2 small islands not far from the Human Academy Island, they were the Heavenly Academy Island and the Earth Academy Island respectively. They were under the control of Chu Wuming and Chu Wuxuan. However, just as they stepped onto the small island, Wuyan brought 2 students from the Human Academy Island to wait for them. Seeing Xiaochen and Chu Wuming come ashore, Wuyan bowed and said, "Your Highness, young Master Xiao." Chu Wuming nodded slightly at Wuyan. He took the lead and walked towards the Heavenly Academy Island while Xiaochen followed by his side. The Human Academy Island wasn't small, so it shouldn't be a problem for it to accommodate a few 100,000 people. However, according to Chu Wuming, there were only a little over 1,000 students on the Human Academy Island, whereas the Heavenly Academy Island and Earth Academy Island had over 3,000 students. Compared to the other 2 academies, the Human Academy Island was indeed much weaker. It wasn't just in terms of numbers, it was the same in terms of strength as well. There weren't any outstanding geniuses on the Human Academy Island, and it was precisely because of Chu Wuming's weakness that the Human Academy Island had withered away. After all, there weren't any Dao Emperors holding down the fort, so very few outer court students would choose to join the Human Academy Island when they were promoted to the inner court. This caused the number of students on the Human Academy Island to decrease. When they arrived at the center of the Human Academy Island, an ancient hall appeared before Xiaochen. This was the center of the entire Human Academy Island, and it was also the location of the enforcement hall that managed the Human Academy Island. Apart from the students, there were a total of 148 teachers and 10 elders on the Human Academy Island. The 148 teachers were all existences at the Dao Transformation Realm, and the 10 elders were all experts at the Dao King Realm. Above the 10 elders, there was a branch dean and 2 deans. All 3 of them were extraordinary experts at the Dao Sovereign Realm, and Du Chengfeng was currently the branch dean of the Human Academy Island. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 389. However, there were so many experts on the Human Academy Island. There were 3 Dao Sovereigns, 4 Dao Kings, and over 100 Dao Emperors. Moreover, this was only the Human Academy Island. Xiaochen had clearly underestimated the Royal Academy's strength. He did not expect it to be so powerful. As if he had guessed Xiaochen's thoughts, Chu Wuming smiled and said, "The Royal Academy was built by the imperial family. Therefore, most of the imperial family's strength is naturally invested in the Royal Academy." He explained to Xiaochen. According to Chu Wuming, the imperial family's internal strength was basically divided into 2. One stayed in the imperial palace, while the other merged into the Royal Academy. As such, it was not surprising that the Royal Academy had so many experts. Compared to the other wealthy clans in the Moonless Empire, the imperial family's strength was indeed much stronger. However, with a rough estimate, there were probably no less than 10 Dao sovereigns in the imperial family. Moreover, this was only on the surface. Who knew how much strength the imperial family had hidden in the dark? Compared to the imperial family, even the 4 great prince clans were probably far inferior. This was probably the reason why the Chu clan was able to sit on the throne of the Moonless Empire for so long. As he explained the basic situation of the Human Academy Island to Xiao Chen, the group arrived at the Central Hall. The Central Hall was the center of the Human Academy Island. Outside the hall, there was a square that was not very big. At this moment, many students from the Human Academy Island had already gathered in the square. Apart from the students, many teachers, the 10 great elders, and the 3 deans of the branch schools, including Du Chengfeng, were also waiting there. In the face of Chu Wuming's arrival, these people were extremely respectful. In the imperial capital and the outside world, Chu Wuming, Chu Wuk, and Chu Wushuang could only be considered to be in the development stage. However, in the Royal Academy's inner court, it was the 3 brothers' territory. From the deans of the various branches to every student in the inner court, they were all under the 3 brothers. In the span of a few years, the 3 brothers had built this place into their base. It was also because they had absolute power in the Royal Academy that the 3 brothers' competition in the Royal Academy was extremely intense. It was completely different from the outside world. Seeing Chu Wuming walk over, many students from the Human Academy Island bowed in unison. "Greetings, Your Highness." In the face of everyone's greetings, Chu Wuming nodded slightly. Then, he walked directly to the group led by Du Chengfeng. When they saw Chu Wuming, everyone bowed as well. After greeting Chu Wuming, Du Chengfeng also bowed to Xiao Chen. "Young Master Xiao. Elder Du is too polite." In the face of Du Chengfeng's greeting, Xiao Chen also returned the greeting. After greeting everyone, Chu Wuming turned around to look at everyone. He held Xiao Chen's shoulder and shouted loudly, "Brothers, this is Xiao Chen. He's my brother Xiao Chen. From today onwards, Brother Xiao is also a member of the Human Academy Island. From today onwards, Brother Xiao's words are equivalent to my words. You must obey them. If anyone dares to be disrespectful to Brother Xiao, I will punish them severely." After introducing Xiao Chen to everyone present, the surrounding students from the Human Academy Island began to whisper among themselves when they heard Chu Wuming's words. "Xiao Chen. He's the person who defeated Yang Heng at the bestowal ceremony a few days ago? Oh my God, His Highness actually recruited him to the Human Academy Island. Doesn't this mean that we don't have to be afraid of Yang Heng and the others?" Xiao Chen's reputation had spread throughout the imperial capital after he defeated Yang Heng. Naturally, the students from the Human Academy Island had heard of such an outstanding battle record. Previously, they had already started to admire Xiao Chen. Now that they finally saw him in person, they naturally couldn't help but whisper among themselves. Especially the female students. When they looked at Xiao Chen, who was dressed in white, their eyes lit up. To them, Xiao Chen's temperament and appearance were completely in line with their imaginations of a Prince Charming. In an instant, he became the focus of everyone's attention. However, Xiao Chen's expression didn't change at all. Xiao Chen had experienced this kind of situation many times. It was the same back in the Tianqian continent. After introducing Xiao Chen, Chu Wuming looked at Du Chengfeng and said, "Elder Du, the same goes for you. In the future, when I'm not around, Brother Zhao's words are equivalent to my words. You have to follow them. Rest assured, Your Highness. This old servant understands." Elder Du responded respectfully when he heard Chu Wuming's words. Seeing Elder Du nod, Chu Wuming left with Xiao Chen. On the Human Academy Island, Chu Wuming had his own residence. Although it wasn't big, the environment was extremely beautiful. However, at this moment, beside Chu Wuming's residence, a newly built residence had been completed. This was the residence that Chu Wuming prepared for Xiao Chen. It wasn't a big residence, but it wouldn't be a problem for more than 100 people to live in. When Chu Wuming brought Xiao Chen to the entrance of the residence, 4 beautiful maids bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, young master." These 4 maids were prepared by Chu Wuming for Xiao Chen. After all, Xiao Chen would be behind the Royal Academy in the future. It would be more convenient to have a few maids by his side to serve him. Brother Xiao Chen, what do you think of this place? If you're not satisfied, I'll get someone to renovate it. Your Highness is too kind. Not bad, This place is very good. Hearing Chu Wuming's words, Xiaochen nodded slightly and said, Brother Xiaochen is too polite. Since you're satisfied, please personally nominate this place. After all, this will be your home in the future. Previously, Chu Wuming didn't nominate this residence because he wanted to wait for Xiaochen to personally nominate it. Looking at the plaque that was already hanging above the entrance, Xiaochen didn't need to hesitate too much. Since this was his residence, Xiaochen took out his scarlet wind sword and slashed it. Very quickly, the words Dustless Residence appeared on the plaque. Dustless Residence, a good name. Looking at the 3 words, Chu Wuming laughed loudly. He had already arranged everything for Xiaochen, and it could be said that he had taken care of everything. After staying in the Human Academy Island, Xiaochen also made a request to Chu Wuming. It was to let the young disciples from the Heavenly Stellar Residence enter the Royal Academy. Of course, they could start from the outer courtyard. In the Heavenly Stellar Residence, the Heavenly Stellar Continent warriors were not limited to the older generation. There were also more than 10 people from the younger generation. These people's cultivation bases were all at the Earth Mirror realm. After observing for a while, Xiaochen found that the Imperial Academy was indeed a very suitable place for cultivation. Even the 9 Firmaments Palace of the past could not compare to this place. If they could enter the academy to cultivate, it would obviously be very beneficial. It was much better than staying in the Heavenly Stellar Residence. Faced with Xiaochen's request, Chu Wuming didn't refuse. Getting a few people into the outer courtyard was a simple matter for Chu Wuming, so he immediately agreed. Chapter 390. Chu Wuming agreed to Xiaochen's request without hesitation. However, it wasn't difficult for Chu Wuming to get a dozen spots for outer courtyard disciples. Xiaochen's goal of getting the dozen or so youngsters from the Tianqian residence into the Royal Academy wasn't to let them participate in the battle for the position of Crown Prince. Instead, he wanted them to improve faster. Xiaochen already knew a lot about the Royal Academy. He also understood that cultivating in the Royal Academy was definitely the best choice for them. How could he let go of this opportunity? Chu Wuming chatted with Xiaochen for a while in the Dustless Residence before leaving. After sending Chu Wuming off, Xiaochen returned to his room. The 4 maids still followed closely behind him. You don't have to follow me all the time. I'll instruct you when I need you, Xiaochen said faintly as he turned to look at the 4 maids. Looking at the 4 maids, Xiaochen suddenly thought of Qing Yao and Qing Luo. In the Tianqian continent, the 2 of them had been by his side since the East Sword Pavilion. They had been in charge of taking care of his daily needs. Even later, Qin Shuru and Fairy of 100 Flowers had been taken care of by the 2 of them. Compared to Qing Yao and Qing Luo, the 4 maids that Chu Wuming had found clearly couldn't be compared. He suddenly thought of Qing Yao and Qing Luo. Back then, the 2 of them had also gone to the Tiana continent. Xiaochen sighed softly. He wondered how they were doing now. There was also Qin Shuru and Fairy of 100 Flowers. Xiaochen returned to his room alone so that the 4 of them didn't have to follow him all the time. He closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the futon to begin cultivating. Although Xiaochen had already reached the limit of breaking through to the Dao Querying realm, Xiaochen had never slacked off in his daily cultivation. In the blink of an eye, the sun had already set in the west. Night fell and the Human Academy Island gradually quietened down. It was in this dark night that 2 uninvited guests arrived at the Dustless Residence. They didn't walk through the main door. Instead, they climbed over the wall and entered the courtyard. The courtyard wasn't big to begin with. The 2 of them quickly confirmed the room that Xiaochen was staying in and arrived outside Xiaochen's room. It was obvious that their target was Xiaochen. They were about to push the door and enter, but Xiaochen's voice sounded from within the room. Since you're here, please come in. The Dustless. The Wind, the core disciple of the Windless Sacred Sect, and Yang Sr., the core disciple of the Windless Sacred Sect, walked into the room. S's. The first prince and Yang's, the core disciple of the Windless Sect. Xiaochen had already stood up from the futon. Looking at the two of them, Xiao Chen's expression was calm. It was as though he wasn't surprised by their appearance. At the same time, Chu Wuck's expression was the same. He looked at Xiao Chen and smiled. "Young Master Xiao Chen, I'm sorry to disturb you so late at night. Please excuse me. First Prince, you're too courteous. Aren't you already here whether I excuse you or not? Please take a seat." Xiao Chen smiled when he heard Chu Wuck's words. Chu Wuck wasn't angered by Xiao Chen's words. He sat down opposite Xiao Chen and pointed at Yang Heng Sr. "Let me introduce you. This is Brother Chenju. He's also a core disciple of the Windless Sacred Sect." Yang Heng Sr. was called Chenju. After hearing Chu Wuck's introduction, Xiao Chen gestured for Chenju to take a seat. Seeing this, Chenju nodded slightly and sat down beside Chu Wuck. At this point, Xiao Chen slowly opened his mouth and said, "Your Highness, why have you come so late at night?" Xiao Chen had already guessed Chu Wuck's purpose for coming so late at night. He was obviously asking the obvious. Chu Wuck didn't hide anything. "Young Master Xiao, don't you know why I'm here? Since that's the case, I'll be frank. Young Master Xiao, why don't you come under me? Let's do something big together. How about it?" Chu Wuck spoke without any pretense or concealment. He had come in the middle of the night to rope Xiao Chen in. Hearing Chu Wuck's words, a faint smile appeared on Xiao Chen's face. He didn't reply. Chu Wuck continued. "Young Master Xiao should understand that although my third brother has the support of Young Master Xiao and Senior Fantian, it's still very difficult for him to fight for the position of Crown Prince. However, I'm different. I'm only one step away from the position of Crown Prince. If I can get Young Master Xiao's help, I can definitely obtain the position of Crown Prince in the shortest time possible." Chu Wuming's rise made Chu Wuck feel a trace of danger. The source of this danger was Xiao Chen and the Fantian ruler. If not for Xiao Chen and the Fantian ruler, Chu Wuming would be nothing. Therefore, when he received news that Xiao Chen had entered the Royal Academy, Chu Wuck immediately decided to pay a late-night visit. If he could rope in Xiao Chen, then Chu Wuming wouldn't be a problem at all. Even if it was Chu Wushuang, Chu Wuck could easily kill him. Xiao Chen's smile became even brighter when he heard Chu Wuck's invitation. After a while, Xiao Chen slowly opened his mouth. "Before you came, First Prince, how confident were you in succeeding?" Chu Wuck said inexplicably. Hearing this, Chu Wuck replied calmly, "Not even a single bit. Since that's the case, First Prince still wants to come. Aren't you afraid of making a wasted trip? Some things have to be tried. What if I succeed? However, looking at Young Master Xiao, it seems that I'm destined to return disappointed tonight. Since First Prince already has an answer, then I won't send you off." Naturally, he couldn't rely on Chu Wuck. Firstly, Chu Wuck gave Xiao Chen an extremely sinister feeling. Cooperating with such a person was no different from asking a tiger for its skin. It was very dangerous. Therefore, even though Chu Wuck's influence was the strongest among the three brothers, Xiao Chen still didn't have any intention of helping him. After being rejected, Chu Wuck calmly looked at Xiao Chen. The two of them stared at each other. After a while, Chu Wuck stood up and smiled. "Since that's the case, I'll take my leave. However, before I leave, I have something to tell Young Master Xiao. Since I was young, I've always believed that it's best to get rid of those who can't be of use to you but will bring you trouble. Furthermore, even though my third brother is quite capable, it's still a little difficult for him to protect Young Master Xiao. That's all I have to say. If Young Master Xiao changes his mind, you can come and look for me. Don't regret it when you're at the end of the road." After speaking, Chu Wuck left with Chenju without waiting for Xiao Chen's reply. As Xiao Chen watched the two of them leave, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. The words just now were undoubtedly a threat. Furthermore, other than a threat, he clearly felt a killing intent from Chu Wuck. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.